Out of the corner of his eye, Weaver saw a massive fist rapidly approaching him. Instincts worked faster than thoughts. Many years had passed since he had stood in the ring, but the skills honed in countless fights had never left him. Speed may no longer be his forte, but his ability to read an opponent and react to powerful attacks has remained with him. At the last moment, he dodged the furious blow, coming closer to the thug, and finding himself dangerously close, struck a crushing blow with his left hand right in the ribs. The air left his opponent's lungs, and his heavy body swayed backwards. The brute was surprised this blow clearly did not correspond to Weaver's size. He did not expect such strength from a man who looked smaller and, at first glance, weaker. Weaver, on the other hand, remained calm, his mind extremely focused. While the enemy regained his balance, he studied his movements, his breathing, his gaze. And there it was, the familiar expression he had seen so often in the ring: fear. In the eyes of this giant, accustomed to suppressing opponents with just his mass, doubt arose. The brute began to realize that he was faced with something much more dangerous than he could have imagined. Not wanting to admit defeat, the man went on the attack again. His huge hands forcefully cut through the air over and over again, trying to reach Weaver. But every blow only hits the void. Weaver moved with a grace that might have been reminiscent of a dancer, if not for his deadly precision. He dodged, stepped to the side, dropped lower, forcing the enemy to waste energy and lose momentum. Each mistake was accompanied by growing disappointment in the eyes of the thug. Soon it became a game. Weaver seemed to mock his opponent, circling around him, easily avoiding blows. The thug's hands began to fill with leaden weight, his breathing became heavy and hoarse. He was no longer attacking, he was defending himself, although perhaps he didn't even realize it himself. But Weaver was tired of playing. Time to knock out your opponent. He approached the man and, without allowing him to come to his senses, struck several quick blows. Left hook, right uppercut, each blow found its target. The thug's face was filled with blood, his body staggered, but Weaver did not let him fall. The last blow, a powerful right side kick, ended with the opponent flying spectacularly through a wooden table. Dishes and bottles scattered to the sides, and the heavy body fell face down on the dirty floor. The seconds dragged on. The air smelled of sweat and spilled beer. Weaver did not retreat to a neutral corner as he did in the ring. He just stood over his defeated opponent, carefully watching his every move. The brute tried to get up slowly, with great effort, leaning on his hands. But his attempts looked pathetic. He seemed to want nothing more than to disappear, so as not to meet Weaver's gaze, full of confidence and superiority. Not wanting to receive any more punishment and completely demoralized, the defeated man staggered out the door. Damn, Weaver thought. If I keep beating up customers, Jerry won't let me in here anymore. He sheepishly returned to his bar stool. Weaver, Jerry, the bar owner, began. I know the fight last week wasn't your fault, and I know you were defending Susie right now, but damn, you need to stop using my place as a boxing ring. It's starting to get a bad reputation. I know, Jerry, I'm sorry, but Susie shouldn't have to put up with that kind of crap. Yes, I know, you're right, it's just. He hesitated, looking over Weaver's shoulder. I should probably thank you, but here comes Susie. I think I'll let her do it for me, Jerry said, and went to pour Susie's defender a free drink. Weaver's body tensed, and he pulled back as a pretty blonde in a skimpy waitress outfit kissed him on the lips. My hero, she said sincerely. Thank you, Weaver. This guy was getting too cocky. He offered me money to go out to the parking lot with him, and when I refused, well, you saw, he began to behave aggressively. It's okay, Susie. I'm just glad I could help, he replied quietly, then turned back to the bar and thoughtfully began to sip the free scotch and water that the grateful bar owner had left for him. Feeling a little hurt and a little confused, Susie went back to the waiting tables. Sitting in the far corner of the bar, Arlene Reynolds witnessed the entire scene, including Weaver's reaction to the pretty girl's kiss. Arlene held a high-stress position as a senior executive at Peterson Industries, a private equity firm. Sometimes she went to Jerry's place to relieve stress before returning to her empty apartment. She was a representative of a new generation of modern women confidently moving towards success in the 21st century, who are written about in women's magazines. One glance was enough to understand that she knew exactly what she wanted from life and was on the way to getting it. Was she beautiful? Most men would say no, but she knew how to highlight her best features while looking attractive. Her hairstyle, makeup, clothes, all this created the image of a strong, confident, intelligent woman who confidently climbed the career ladder. Some men even thought she was intimidating. Every day she worked with a variety of people, big, small, smart, very smart, and not too smart. This is what made life interesting. Take this man at the counter, for example, she thought. She hated fighting, but she admired courage, and he certainly had it. She watched him stare into his glass as if it were a crystal ball. She sighed. He was dressed quite simply, probably a worker, she thought, not exactly the kind of person she would usually make contact with. And yet there was something attractive about him. She couldn't help herself. And what will happen next? She asked with a friendly smile, sitting down on the chair next to him. What? He said quietly again. What do you mean? You look at the glass as if it could predict the future. So what happens next? She repeated, motioning for Jerry to order a drink. He chuckled slightly and then smirked. Lady, if I want to see my future, I just look at my past. Well, that sounded gloomy, Arlene thought. It's time to change tactics. She decided to boost his ego. I saw you beat up that thug who was harassing the waitress. He was a real monster. Weren't you scared? Weaver took a moment to respond. No, he was just another guy. I'm not afraid of men. It's women who scare me. Women? She asked in surprise. Are you afraid of women? Lady, a man will break your nose, your jaw, maybe a couple of ribs, but a woman will break your heart. It will break your spirit. With that, he stood up, threw a 20 on the bar, and left without saying another word. Well, that was pretty rude, Arlene said to Jerry as he went to collect the money. Yes, this is Weaver. He's not very talkative. Is Weaver a first or last name? Neither one nor the other, it's a nickname. He used to be a boxer, and, in my opinion, quite good. A couple of my regulars who were into boxing were delighted when he started coming here a while ago. They tried to make friends with him, but as you already understood, he doesn't like communication too much. Don't get me wrong, he's a nice enough person, he just doesn't talk much. Well, I wouldn't say he's nice, Arlene objected. I was just trying to be friendly. Don't take it personally. I think it has to do with the fact that you are a woman. Did you see him when Susie kissed him? To be honest, I thought he would rush to the exit. Yes, I noticed that, she replied. And all this talk about the woman breaking his heart. What does it mean? I don't know exactly. Those guys I told you about told you that his wife left for someone else while he was preparing for some important battle. I think she was the one who broke his heart, and to tell the truth, it still hasn't healed. Over the next few days, Arlene couldn't get Weaver out of her head. Damn, she thought, this is just ridiculous. Why am I so obsessed with this guy? It wasn't a matter of romantic interest, she hadn't had that since college. No, she was fascinated by the mystery surrounding this man. She tried to find him on the internet. I came across hundreds of articles on how to weave carpets, but nothing about a boxer with that name. Who is he? Did his wife really break his heart by leaving for someone else? No matter how hard she tried, Arlene couldn't shake her curiosity. Arlene, Carolyn, her assistant, said to her, standing in the doorway of the office, "Don't forget that you have a management meeting at 3 today." Oh, that's right. Thank you, Carolyn, she said, glancing at the clock on her desk. It was already a little after 2. She caught herself for having her head in the clouds and began to check whether she had everything for the meeting. As everyone began to gather in the conference room, Arlene had an idea. Bob Rawlings. She heard him talking about training kids in some boxing program. I wonder if he knows anything about Weaver, she thought. Before taking her seat, she leaned over to Bob and said quietly, "Bob, do you have time to talk to me after the meeting?" Bob felt his heart beat faster. He looked around to see if anyone had noticed his excitement. Ever since Arlene came to work for the company 3 years ago, Bob had fallen hopelessly in love with her. The problem was that she didn't notice him, and he was too shy to do anything. She seemed completely focused on work and uninterested in making friends. One day, at a company picnic, he took the plunge and brought her a piece of cake, hoping to strike up a conversation. Unfortunately, she refused with a friendly smile, saying that she did not like sweets. Bob took this as a refusal and retreated with his tail between his legs. From then on, except for the nods and smiles in the hallway, his attempt with the cake remained his last pathetic effort to win her heart. "Of course," he said, trying not to let his voice waver. Bob had a hard time concentrating on what was being discussed at the meeting. All he could think about was the opportunity to talk to Arlene. Of course, he assumed that the conversation would be about work, but it didn't matter, he would agree to anything. The meeting dragged on. It ended at almost 6 in the evening. Bob thought that the conversation would have to be postponed until tomorrow, but he was pleasantly surprised. "Bob, I didn't expect the meeting to take so long," she said as they left the conference room together. "Would you like to have a drink somewhere?" Bob felt sweat forming under his collar. He loosened his tie and undid the top button of his shirt. "I wonder if his forehead is sweating." "Easy there, hero," she joked as they turned into the corridor. "I didn't offer you to undress, just a drink." "What? Oh no, I don't. I mean," Arlene noticed his embarrassment and decided to diffuse the situation with a wide smile. "Relax, Bob. I heard you train children in boxing, and I want to ask you a little about this sport," she said. Bob relaxed. Hell, he could talk about boxing all night. They drove in 2 cars to a small bar nearby. Bob pulled out a chair for Arlene as she sat down. As he took his place opposite her, the waitress was already there, ready to take her order. As soon as she left, Bob started talking. "I have to admit, Arlene, I didn't think you were interested in boxing." "Oh God, of course not. I think it's barbaric and stupid to force 2 men to beat each other for money," she said without thinking. Bob was clearly taken aback. "She called me out for a drink just to insult me?" he thought. When Arlene saw the anger on his face, she realized what she had said. "Oh, Bob, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." She had no idea how to apologize, especially since that was exactly how she felt about boxing. At this point, the waitress returned with their drinks and promised that she would check soon to see if they needed anything else. "If you think so, then what exactly do you want to know?" asked Bob. His shy charm seemed to have evaporated. He was angry and did not try to hide it. "I'm really sorry I said that, Bob. Please forgive me." He just smiled slightly. Boxing was an important part of his life. "So what exactly do you want to know?" he asked again. Arlene really felt guilty. From what she knew of him, Bob was a good man, and she had no intention of offending him. "I'll have to make amends somehow," she thought. But now she needed to find out if he could shed light on what interested her. "Have you ever heard of a boxer named Weaver?" she asked. "I think I." "Weaver? Of course I heard," he answered sharply. His real name was Chuck Adams. He was an amazing middleweight and could have become a champion. "Why are you asking?" "Well, I met him the other day." "Did you meet him?" Bob was surprised. "This is impossible. He disappeared many years ago." "Hell, I don't even know if he's alive." "Oh, he's very much alive, Bob. I saw him take down a guy twice his size the other day at Jerry's bar." "Weaver? How do you know it was him?" asked Bob. "Well, everyone called him that. I'm guessing this is the same person. I talked to Jerry, the owner of the bar, and he said the man was a former professional boxer. He mentioned that his wife had left him for someone else. This is true." "Ah, well, it was a rumor, but I'm not sure if it's true or not." There was a lot of gossip when the fight was canceled. Weaver's manager said he became seriously ill, and then he just disappeared. Never got into the ring again. I thought maybe the manager was right and he died, although nothing was written about it in the media. Bob thought about it. "You know, he's from here, from our area. As far as I remember, he grew up in the north of the city. Why was he called Weaver? Arlene asked. Because he always lobbed. This means that his upper body was always in motion. Hitting a moving target is more difficult. That's what sports journalists called him. Bob, it seems that this is the same person. You should have seen him beat up that guy in the bar. He tried to hit him, but in my opinion, he never even touched him. Eventually, Weaver started throwing right and left hands and knocked him down onto the table. Careful, Arlene, Bob said sarcastically. You almost seemed to enjoy watching it. Arlene knew he was right. She smiled wryly. Bob, I'm really sorry for my words, honestly. Let me make it up to you. I'll buy you dinner. He thought for a minute. Well, she insulted him, but he had been insulted before. Besides, he wanted to get to know her better at first sight. No, really, he replied, and then smiled. Dinner is at my expense. So, said Arlene, cutting the fish with a fork, enlighten me. Why shouldn't I feel that way about boxing? Oh, I guess you don't want me to start. I could talk about boxing all night. Let's talk about you better. What do you do for fun? Well, this is a topic I can talk about for 2 or 3 minutes, she said with a smile. I haven't had much fun since I moved to Chicago. My parents and sister live in Philadelphia, but there just weren't any opportunities, workers there. So, when I was offered a job here, I accepted, but I didn't make any friends yet. I was too busy at work. And you don't box in your free time, do you? I used to do it. If it weren't for boxing, I don't know what would have happened to me. Arlene looked at him as if he was saying something strange. She simply couldn't understand how a barbaric and cruel form of entertainment like boxing could help anyone intelligent. Except, of course, the greedy scoundrel promoters and others who profit from cruelty by having two Neanderthals beat each other up. Listen, he said, seeing the expression on her face. I grew up in a very difficult area. Between gangs and illegal substances, there were few prospects for most kids in my area. Half of us skipped school because it was more dangerous there than on the street. A police officer from our neighborhood, his name was Brian Samuelson, one day noticed me hanging around looking for trouble and brought me to the gym. He put gloves on me and showed me how to properly stand up and throw a punch. It changed my life, he said, cutting another piece of steak. Suddenly, I realized that I was good at something. The hope that maybe I could do something with my life other than sell illegal substances on the corner. I gained confidence in myself. I don't mean confidence that I can beat someone up, but confidence in myself. As a person, I joined the SIO boxing program. This is a Chicago youth organization. At that time, it was headed by Tony Zale. He became the world middleweight champion twice, and he was an amazing person. Bob looked at Arlene. The expression on her face changed to one of interest, and he continued. I was a sophomore in high school when Tony showed me some scholarships that were available for collegiate boxing. Between him and Brian, they made sure my grades were up and I stayed out of trouble. When it came time to apply, they both wrote me letters of recommendation. Tony's name carried a lot of weight, and because of this, I received 2 scholarships. None of them covered all the expenses, but together they allowed me to graduate with a bachelor's degree in business administration. After that, I gained practical experience by serving in the Navy for 4 years. I also became the Armed Forces boxing champion in my weight category. By this point, Arlene realized how much she had offended her colleague with her words. She felt very tiny when Bob finished her off with the last blow. After serving in the Navy, I came home and got a job at Peterson Industries. Both Tony and Brian had passed away by this time, but I volunteered all my free time to a local Catholic youth organization so that the boxing program would not die with them. I want it to continue to exist so that other guys can have the same chance that I had. So now you understand why I react so sensitive when it comes to boxing. If it weren't for boxing, I would most likely either be in prison or lying in a wooden box for a long time, he said with a smile. Arlene was delighted. She was born and raised in Drexel Park, a suburb of Philadelphia. It was an upper-middle-class area with big houses and spoiled children. She had never met people like Bob before. He impressed her. Bob, I'm so sorry. Honestly, I didn't know, she pleaded. Don't worry, he replied. Many people think the same. Okay, he said, taking a sip of wine. Tell me more about this guy you think is Weaver. There's really not much to tell, except that he's afraid of women. Afraid of women? Bob asked, realizing that he himself shared this fear a little. Yes, he said that a man can break his nose or his jaw, but a woman can break his heart. Bob thought about it. He had never been hurt by a woman in this way, but he felt some kind of empathy for this man. Wow, that must be deep, right? It seems this guy, whoever he is, was once seriously hurt by a woman. Yes, I even feel sorry for him, especially if it's really this Weaver. It's like he was at the top of his game, and then he just gave it all up. At that moment, an idea came to her mind. Listen, Jerry says he comes to this bar quite often. Why don't you and I stop by there a few times after work? I'll at least buy you a couple of drinks in case he shows up. Would you recognize him if you saw him? Of course, Bob couldn't refuse such an offer. I think so, he replied. Good idea. If it really is Weaver, I'd love to meet him. How about tomorrow evening? I'll even let you treat me. Arlene rarely made plans after work, so she didn't even have to think twice about it. Yes, tomorrow evening will do. They had one more drink after dinner and then said goodbye. Bob's heart fluttered. He finally got to meet Arlene outside of work. Besides the fact that she didn't like boxing, she seemed like a nice person to him. He was excited and looked forward to meeting again. Arlene also thought about their evening as she walked home. They worked together for many years, but she never found time to talk to him about anything other than work. What a pity, she thought. They didn't meet at work the next day, but shortly before 5, Carolyn reported that Bob Rawlings was calling on the first line. Hi, Bob, she replied in a less than businesslike tone. I was just about to call you. Are we still going today? Yes, that's why I'm calling. Where are you parked? I'll meet you at the car. I'll have to go get you. I have no idea where this Jerry's bar is. Oh, okay. I'm parked in the side parking lot in the second row. I'll look for you when I get out. I'm almost ready. I need no more than 10 minutes. What should I bring you? Susie asked as Arlene and Bob sat down at a table at the end of the bar. I'd like white wine, please, Arlene replied. I'll have a light beer, Bob added. Thank you, he politely thanked the pretty waitress when she left. Arlene leaned toward her colleague, lowering her voice. This is the same girl Weaver helped the other day, the one he got into a fight over. He almost ran out of the bar when she thanked him with a kiss. It was so strange. He beat up a guy twice his size and then looked like he was scared to death of her. She whispered so that no one but Bob could hear her. Damn, are you sure this guy is okay? Maybe he has some kind of phobia. I don't think so, Bob. I think he was just really offended. I don't know, maybe he hates women, but I didn't notice anything abnormal about him. Susie brought their drinks and set them on the table. Do you want to open an account? She asked. Yes, that would be. Hey, remember, the drinks are on me, Arlene said, handing her credit card to the bartender. Open an account for this card, please. We'll probably be here for a while, she added, turning to the pretty blonde. Oh, before you go, how often does Weaver come here? Asked Bob. Oh, almost every night, she replied before returning to the bar to swipe her card. Maybe we'll be lucky and he'll come by today, Arlene suggested. I'm not sure that would be luck, Bob replied, looking at the puzzled girl across from him. Then I won't have an excuse to meet you for drinks after work. A wide smile appeared on Arlene's face. You don't need a reason, Bob. I'll be happy to have a drink with you anytime. Well, that was reassuring, Bob thought. He began to question his charming companion and finally managed to get her to open up. He learned that their childhoods were completely different. She grew up in a wealthy family and got almost everything she wanted, including a horse for her 16th birthday. They were so engrossed in conversation that none of them noticed a thin man who came in and sat down at the bar. Shall I bring you one more? Asked Susie. Yes, one more, Bob answered. By the way, Susie added, you asked about Weaver. He's been sitting at the bar for about 15 minutes. Arlene's face lit up. Could you invite him to join us? No, wait, Bob interrupted. I don't want to invite him to come to us. I'll go to him myself. Can you tell me where it is? He asked, standing up. He's third from the left, she answered. Mr. Adams, Bob said, extending his hand to the serious man. Weaver turned his head to see who was speaking to him. Do we know each other? He asked. As soon as their eyes met, Bob recognized him immediately. There was a little less hair, but it was still brown and cut short. He noticed the scar over his left eye that he had received in the third round of his fight with Alexander, and the same steely gaze that had intimidated so many of his opponents. No, sir, but I know you. My name is Bob Rawlings. It's a great honor for me to meet you. Not wanting to seem like a completely rude man, Weaver shook hands before turning back to the bar. Mr. Adams, I don't want to intrude, but I would be very pleased if you would join us at the table. Normally, Weaver would have sent a guy like that to hell, but he clearly didn't want to start any more conflicts in the bar. Besides, there was something about Bob that he liked, perhaps the fact that he called him by his real name. Whatever it was, he decided to accept the invitation. Well, he said, sitting down to the right of a smiling Arlene. Unless she's the same lady who thinks the future can be seen in a glass of whiskey. Arlene blushed and apologized for bothering him the other day. When she finished her apology, Bob continued the conversation. Mr. Adams. Call me Weaver. Everyone does it. Okay, Weaver. I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed watching you in the ring and what an honor it was to meet you. I've been involved with boxing all my life. I love watching true masters, and you were one of the best. I am the director of the SIO boxing program. This is a wonderful organization. Do you know her? Weaver did not answer, continuing to stare intently into his glass. Bob continued. Anyway, we accept kids from all over Chicago who want to learn boxing. I'm just one of many volunteers working with these guys. We teach them the basics in the ring, but more importantly, we spend time with them. This keeps them off the streets. Most of the children who come to us do not have a normal home life. That's why they're looking for us. We teach them not only boxing. We teach them respect, fair play, self-discipline, and being true to themselves. Besides boxing, it is also a great mentoring program. Bob waited for at least some reaction from Weaver, but there was none. He didn't notice how Arlene was looking at him, admiring his pride in his work. I wonder if you ever thought about volunteering for a program like this, Weaver. The kids would absolutely love to be coached by someone of your caliber. Weaver took a sip of his whiskey and water and sighed as he replied, No, I never thought about it. It would also be a way to give back to. Boxing, I mean, Bob suggested. Suddenly, the figure of the sad man came to life. Repay the debt? Crap. Hasn't he already taken enough? He took away everything that ever meant anything to me. Respect, fair play, he chuckled with irritation. What the hell could I possibly teach the kids from all of this? I'm just a washed-up boxer who once thought he was special. He downed the rest of his drink. Listen, he said, getting up from his chair. Thanks for the offer, but no, I'm not interested. Thanks for the drink, he added before leaving the bar. Well, it could have gone better, Bob remarked. You have achieved more than I, Arlene replied. Now I understand what you were talking about. I was sure that he would jump at the opportunity to take up boxing again, even as a trainer for children. I didn't expect such a reaction at all. I don't know what's wrong, Bob, but when I saw him pull his hand away from the waitress after that incident, I just couldn't calm down. His reaction to your proposal only aroused my curiosity more. Arlene, it's none of our business. We need to leave him alone. Obviously, he doesn't want us poking around in his life. But Bob, what if we can help him? Help? How? I don't know. That's why I'm trying to find out as much as possible about him. Until I know his story, I won't be able to figure out how to help him. What makes you think that even then you can help him? Look, Arlene, this guy has clearly been through something very difficult. I even like him, and I would like to help him too, but judging by his behavior, Bringing up the past will only bring him more pain. I can't help it, Bob. I have to try to help him. Bob sighed heavily. He really felt like leaving Weaver alone was the best thing they could do for him. But if Arlene was determined, he at least wanted to support her. Have you spoken to Derek Hoover? He asked reluctantly. With Derek Hoover? No, why? How can he help? He's a professional investigator, Arlene. Hell, he does all kinds of research for the company. He uncovered shady deals, corporate fraud, tax scams. You name it. Maybe he can find out more about what happened to Weaver. Arlene's eyes lit up and a wide smile appeared on her face. Bob, you are a genius. I didn't even think about him. Just don't get him into trouble. Make sure he understands that this is not related to company affairs, he reminded her. Oh, I'll do that. I'll pay him to do this in his free time if he agrees. While Arlene was contemplating how to approach Derek, Bob took advantage of the moment of silence to think about asking her out on a real date. What he said about boxing as a source of self-confidence was true in every aspect of his life, except his interactions with women. They were rarely in the ring. He had no sisters, and with the exception of a couple of parties in college and a few casual encounters during his time in the Navy, he had no experience with the opposite sex. He wanted Arlene to love him, and he was afraid that asking her out too early might turn her off. Maybe I'll wait until next week, he thought, but at that moment, Bob, I want to thank you for all your help. She intertwined her fingers, rested her elbows on the table, and rested her chin on her folded hands, looking into his eyes. I like you, Bob. I don't know why I didn't notice before what a good person you are, but I want to make up for lost time. Would you like to go somewhere with me? I would be happy, he answered, trying to hide his excitement. Do you know where I would like to go? She asked flirtatiously. Name the place, he said. To the gym, to see how you work with the guys, she said. Of all the places she could think of for their first date, the gym wasn't even on his list. He looked at her face. Is she joking? To the gym? Do you want to go there on a date seriously? Arlene smiled widely and nodded vigorously. When you were talking to Weaver just now, you looked so proud, talking about what this place means to the kids. I want to see it myself. Are you sure? He asked again. You know, it doesn't smell very nice there, and some of the guys are pretty rude. I want to see, she confirmed. I want to look at you. I want to see how you work with them. Do you enter the ring yourself? Of course. Well, don't fight. I spar a little with some of the guys, but that's it. I want to see. He studied her smiling face. She was serious. Wasn't it you who said that boxing is barbaric? Yes, she said, lowering her eyes, but I apologized for that. I guess. Well, that's the way you talk about him. I think you helped me look at it from a different perspective. I'm not saying I've completely changed my mind, but maybe I should know a little more before I judge. He studied her face again, searching for any hint of insincerity. If there was one, he didn't notice it. Okay, agreed, at any time. Just tell me, he answered enthusiastically. How about Friday night? Can you pick me up? Certainly. Is 7 okay? He always found it strange that he could walk into the ring with a guy who was going to beat him to a pulp and remain completely calm, but could never shake his anxiety around a woman. She may not have even realized it, but for him, the gym was the best place for their first date. As soon as they walked inside, he began to relax. For Arlene, it was the other way around. This environment was completely out of her comfort zone, and she involuntarily squeezed his hand when she heard the first wolf whistle. Hey, hey, Bob said loudly above the usual noise. What did I tell you about respect? Sorry, coach, was heard from several corners of the hall at once. Sorry, miss. Sit here, he said, leading her to the metal folding chairs. Sit down. I need to change clothes. I'll be back in a minute. With these words, he disappeared into another room. Arlene nervously watched the boys as they practiced until one of them approached her. He was, by her estimate, about 12 or 13 years old. Sweat soaked his tangled hair, running into his eyes and down his face. Are you Bob's old friend? He asked. His old girlfriend? She asked again. Well, yes, his lady, you understand. Is he pining for you? She couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. She leaned forward and beckoned the boy with a beckoning motion of her finger. He leaned in to hear her answer. I'm working on it, she whispered. Then she put her finger to her lips with a SHH gesture and added, but don't tell him. The boy straightened up with a crooked smile and nodded, indicating that he understood. Of course, lady, he replied, returning to his training. Arlene gasped as her colleague re-entered the gym. She had never seen him in anything other than a suit before. He always looked attractive, but in her world everyone wore suits. Now he appeared in a dark gray tracksuit with short sleeves. His black wavy hair was tousled and hung down over his forehead from pulling the top part over his head. The chest was completely filled with fabric, but it hung loosely at his waist. The short sleeves hugged his well-defined biceps. Suddenly, the entire room, full of about 30 boys, turned towards him as if he were their general. Okay, guys, before we begin, I want to introduce you to one very special lady. Her name is Arlene, and she will be watching your training today, so I want you all to behave as expected. Is it clear? Yes, coach, his choir answered in unison. Hey, coach, does this mean you can't scratch your manly parts today? Came a rude comment, causing nervous laughter from those gathered. No, he answered, holding back a laugh. But you'll have to keep them inside your pants while you scratch. Bob's remark made everyone laugh even more, including the lady on the metal chair. He approached her. I told you they were a bit rude, he remarked. I'm a grown girl, Bob. I can handle it. Now go do your thing and don't worry about me. Over the next 2 hours, Arlene didn't even notice the discomfort from the hard metal of the chair. She watched as the man she increasingly respected and admired worked his magic. He cared for and respected the boys, and they, in turn, respected and admired him. Okay, guys, he said loudly, clapping his hands. It's time to finish for today. His announcement caused several dissatisfied groans from the tired but inspired wards. Well, come on, let's all take a shower. Live, he ordered. As the boys headed to the showers, Bob came and sat down next to the guest. It was still early, and she gladly accepted his invitation to have a drink after he finished cleaning. He needed to make sure the gloves and other gear were put away and then take a quick shower before they could leave. The boys said goodbye one by one and left. Bob locked the door behind everyone. Give me a minute, I'll take a quick shower and come back, he said. Bob went into the locker room and quickly took off his clothes. He's tired. He knew that the boys were showing off in front of his guest, which gave him a good workout. He turned on the shower, adjusted the water, and stepped into the rising steam. Oh God, there's nothing better than a hot shower, he muttered under his breath. He squeezed a generous amount of shampoo into his hand, closed his eyes, and vigorously rubbed it into his scalp. Thoughts of Arlene brought a dreamy smile as the refreshing water cascaded over his muscular figure. With his eyes closed, Bob stepped under the stream to wash off the foam, completely unaware of the naked woman who slid into the shower behind him. The soft touch of femininity on his water-soaked skin quickened his pulse. He turned around and looked into her smiling face. I thought you might need some help washing your back, she purred. Surprised, he froze for a second and watched as streams of water flowed down the curves and lines of her magnificent body. His body responded. He placed his hand on the back of her head and gently pulled her willing lips to his. Their bodies touched and Arlene felt his arousal press against her stomach. When their eyes met, she gently touched his shoulder and then lowered her hand, running her fingers over his chest. Bob closed his eyes and exhaled, enjoying the closeness and warmth of the moment. This feeling was so pleasant and long-awaited that he almost did not believe that it was reality. But Arlene's smile and the softness of her touch dispelled all doubts. Arlene took a bar of soap and began to slowly lather his shoulders, chest, and arms, whipping up a light lather. Her movements were smooth and caring, as if she was trying to wash away all the fatigue from him. Bob felt the tension gradually leave his body, giving way to peace. Arlene walked around him gently, occasionally touching his hands, giving him sensations full of tenderness. They stood close, feeling each other's warmth, enjoying a moment of silence and harmony in which everything around them seemed unimportant. "I'm on the pills," she assured him. Bob leaned against the shower wall for support, holding Arlene tightly by the waist. She hugged him, and their movements became smooth and harmonious, like dancing to the sound of water. Warm foam slid softly over their skin, enhancing the intimacy of the moment. Their voices merged with the sound of water, filling the shower room with a soft echo. They were close, completely immersed in this moment, enjoying the warmth of the embrace and the feeling of unity. "Unbelievable," Arlene whispered. "It was a long time ago, but it was worth it." "I completely agree," he replied, still breathing heavily. They spent the rest of the evening eating, drinking, and laughing. After dropping Arlene off at her door and receiving a passionate kiss, Bob drove home, dreaming of a future with the woman he had secretly admired for so long. The next 2 weeks, the lovers were busy getting to know each other better. None of them made any attempts to contact Weaver again. However, Arlene assigned a company detective to work on solving the mystery of that mysterious man's broken heart in his spare time. They rarely talked at work. Only once did they manage to coordinate their schedules to have lunch together. It was a Friday afternoon, and Arlene was looking forward to the weekend with her new lover when her assistant's voice came over the intercom. "Arlene, Bob Rawlings is on the first line." "Thank you, Carolyn." Her heart was beating faster even before she pressed the button. "Hello, handsome. I was just thinking about you." "Is it true?" "Well, I always think about you," he answered with a laugh. "I hope you're not calling to cancel our plans." "I'm looking forward to dinner." "No, nothing like that. Just thought you might like to know who showed up at the gym last night." "Who?" she asked before thinking, but the answer came to her before he could answer. "Wait a minute. Is it Weaver?" "That's him," Bob answered. "Oh God, what did he say? Is he going to help you?" "Don't know. He didn't say anything. I was in the ring working with one of the guys with gloves when I noticed him in the corner by the door. When we finished, he was gone." "Why do you think he came?" "I have no idea, but I think that he would not have come if he had not at least considered my proposal. Even though he said in the bar that boxing took everything he loved from him, once something gets into your bloodstream, it's hard to get rid of it. It would be great if he started working with children like you." "I won't hope," Bob replied. "From the little we've talked, he seems very angry, but we'll see." They talked a bit about dinner plans and went back to work. A few minutes after speaking with Bob, Carolyn said there was another call on the line. It was Detective Derek Hoover. "Derek, do you have something?" she asked impatiently. "Well, I couldn't find much. There are a dozen different stories about why this guy left boxing, but none of them are confirmed. However, I found something for you." "What?" she asked excitedly. "The location of his former trainer, Eric Schiefer. If anyone knows the truth, it's him." Arlene felt a slight chill run through her body as she thought about finally uncovering Weaver's mysterious past. "Is he still alive? Where? Where does he live?" "Yes, he is alive. Retired, but alive. He's in his early 60s, Arlene. He lives about 3.5 hours away in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I was going to call him and ask him for his version of events, but I thought you might want to do it yourself." "I won't call him," she answered nervously. "I'll go to him." Arlene took all the information she needed and asked Derek to continue searching. "And his wife?" she asked. "Have you tried to find her?" "Yes, but it seems like she just disappeared. I checked her social number, husband's last name, maiden name. Nothing. I searched for marriage, birth, and death certificates. Zero." "Well, keep looking, okay, Derek? Maybe we'll get lucky," she said with hope in her voice. "I will, Arlene." After hanging up, Arlene was going to call Bob and share the news, but decided to wait and tell him over dinner. By the time they reached the restaurant, she was overcome with emotion and barely waited until they were seated before blurting out, "Guess what?" Bob immediately realized that something had happened. From the moment he picked her up, it was clear that she was excited about something. "What?" he asked. Derek found Coach Weaver. His name is... She paused for a moment, taking the information out of her purse. Eric Schaefer. He lives in Grand Rapids. I'm going to go there and talk to him. Do you want to come with me? The name evoked a vague memory in Bob. Eric Schaefer. Yes, I almost forgot about him. He, in general, also disappeared. He was the one who told everyone that Weaver was sick. Bob felt uncomfortable that they were delving into the past of a man who might just want to be left alone. I don't know, Arlene. Well, Bob, she interrupted, I was thinking we could spend the weekend there, maybe spend the night in a motel on the shore of Lake Michigan. Okay, he didn't really want to delve into Weaver's past, but he definitely couldn't refuse such an offer. Well, since you asked the question like that, he answered with a smile. The years have not been kind to Eric Schaefer. He lived in an old, dilapidated house in one of the disadvantaged areas of the city. His fingers were crooked with arthritis, and poor nutrition and years of self-destructive lifestyle had taken their toll on his body. He looked much older than his age. He initially refused when Arlene called to talk about Weaver, but changed his mind when she offered to pay. We agreed on $200. Both Bob and Arlene winced as they entered the small studio that was now the former coach's world. There was a sour smell in the air, and it was damp. The old wooden floor was stained and sticky. On a small table in the corner, next to the only chair in the room, sat an empty Jack Daniels bottle. They both refused the owner's offer to sit down, saying that they had been sitting in the car for a long time. Where is the money? He muttered, sitting down on the dirty covers of his unmade bed. Arlene handed him an envelope containing 10 $20 bills. The old man coughed with a painful wheeze, counting the money. Okay, what do you want to know? The truth, said Bob. Why did Weaver leave boxing? Because of his damned wife, that's why, Eric said with hatred. This girl of easy virtue got pregnant by another man and left him. Weaver insisted she go to training camp. We all told him to leave her at home, that he needed to focus on training, but he loved that bitch so damn much that he couldn't bear to be apart, not even for a measly month. And then 4 days. 4 measly days before the fight, she disappeared. He refused to train until he found out where she went. In the end, I had to tell him that she ran away with her lover. I tried. I tried to get him back in the ring. I told him to use his anger to direct it at his opponent, but he didn't listen. He no longer had a heart for fighting, and that's what. At one point, he also disappeared. He just took it and disappeared into thin air. I didn't see him again. Well, we saw him, Arlene said before Bob could stop her. The old man looked at her in amazement. Have you seen Weaver? Yes, that's why we ask about him. They both saw his body tense. Is he okay? Eric asked, and his eyes filled with tears. Yes, Arlene replied. He's a little angry at the world, but physically he seems fine. One tear rolled down his wrinkled cheek. Tell him I'm sorry, he said hoarsely. Do you regret it? About what? Come on, Arlene, Bob interrupted. Don't you see how hard it is for him? We bring up too many bad memories. Let's just leave. But Bob took her hand and gently pushed her towards the exit, not allowing her to object. Bob, I had a few more questions, she said, showing her irritation. Listen, we found out what we wanted. The stories that Weaver's wife left him turned out to be true. What else do you need? This old man is already suffering a lot. Haven't you seen his tears? What's the point of opening old wounds? He was right, of course. This explained Weaver's bitterness and reluctance to deal with women. But still, she couldn't stop wondering why Eric said he was sorry. Sorry for what? Although she knew that this question would torment her, she no longer objected. They had a lovely evening ahead of them at a beautiful lakeside hotel, and she didn't want to spoil the mood. Their room was on the 5th floor and overlooked the lake. The sun hung low on the western horizon, already painting the surrounding clouds in brilliant colors. Oh, Bob, Arlene said, stepping out onto the balcony. Look at this view. It's exciting. I agree, he replied. She looked through the glass sliding door and saw him standing in the room, looking at her. No, silly, she said with a smile. Not at me. Come out here and have a look. Bob went out onto the balcony and hugged her. She rested her head on his shoulder, and together they watched as the blazing red sun painted the sky with brilliant colors as it slowly sank into the calm waters of Lake Michigan. As the harbor lights began to flicker into the twilight, Bob took Arlene into his arms and kissed her. How about taking a shower, changing clothes, and finding a good restaurant? He suggested. Can I wash your back? You can wash whatever you want, he answered. Ooh, this is a deal, she noted. At dinner, they talked about everything and nothing. The only taboo topic was work. It was almost midnight when they returned to their room. When Bob opened the bottle of wine he bought on the way from the restaurant, Arlene went out onto the balcony again. The night air greeted her with a warm summer breeze. Below, you could hear the sound of waves crashing onto the beach, and overhead, the pale yellow light of the full moon illuminated the water, creating a path that danced across its surface. Almost lost in the fairy tale atmosphere, she did not hear Bob approach, but she felt his presence and turned around. Beautiful, isn't it? He commented, handing her a glass of wine. Arlene took the glass and looked into his eyes. What was happening to her, she wondered. She had her fair share of boyfriends, of course, but they were more like sex buddies. Never forgetting about her career, she always kept romance in her relationships to a minimum. If it seemed like her current boyfriend was starting to take things too seriously, she would break off the relationship. Bob broke through her defenses, and more importantly, she allowed him to. She put the glass aside and pulled him by the back of his head with her other hand, slowly, gently, until their lips touched. This was not just a pre-sex kiss. It was gentle and loving, maybe even too loving, she was afraid. Is she losing control or giving up? Neither of them had yet taken a single sip of wine, but without saying a word, Bob took her glass and placed both of them on the table. Reminiscent of a scene from an old movie, he picked her up and carried her to the bed. Arlene's heart raced as Bob slowly began to undress her. She trembled all over from his touch. Closing her eyes, she let his tender kisses carry her into a world of castles and princes, a world she had dreamed of as a teenager, wondering what it meant to be in love. Her body responded with a slight tremble when his lips gently touched her sensitive skin. She felt passion filling her more and more. Her back arched, her arms wrapped around his neck, pulling him closer as this unspeakable union arose between them. Their breath mingled, filling the room with the warmth and thrill of the moment. This was just the first of several similar displays of affection they would experience before drifting off into the world of dreams with their arms around each other. The following Monday at work, Arlene called Derek as she and Bob had agreed. Hi, Derek, she greeted him. Hello? Were you able to talk to that guy over the weekend? Yes, Bob was with me. Thanks for finding it, Derek. He basically confirmed what everyone was saying. Weaver's wife had run off with another man. Moreover, she was pregnant from him, she said sadly. Derek was upset when he heard this. Although he had never met Weaver, during the investigation he felt as if he was beginning to recognize him. He was hoping to hear something reassuring. It's a pity, he responded to Arlene's words. Yes, she replied. I think there is no point in continuing to look for something else. Bob thinks we should just leave it as is. He says there's no point in dredging up old memories, especially for Weaver. He's probably right. You sound like you don't quite agree with this. Well, this is. She sighed. I don't know, I just hope to help him, you know. But Bob is right. This old man we saw even cried when we left. I think it's better to just leave it as is, she admitted. Okay, Arlene, if you think so. Yes, it will be better that way. Come to my office with the bill, and I'll write you a check. No payment, Arlene. It was my pleasure to help, he told her. She thanked him again and hung up, feeling deeply disappointed that she had been unable to help Weaver. From the moment she decided to make him her personal project, she dreamed of bringing him and his wife back to each other so that they could live happily ever after. Now she had to admit that this would never happen. For the rest of the week, Arlene again found herself in an unfamiliar situation. She wanted to spend every minute with Bob, but they both had their own lives. She found herself jealous of his activities in the youth organization. Yes, they snuck lunch together on Wednesday and sometimes talked on the phone, but he spent his evenings at the gym, not with her. She understood that she had no right to be jealous, but she could not help herself. She wanted to be with him. Bob felt the same way, but he had obligations. He felt responsible for the children he worked with, each and every one of them, and was not going to let them down. On Thursday evening, he was busy in the ring, refereeing sparring. He had just blown the whistle to start a new round when, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a figure at the door. He recognized Weaver immediately. Bob didn't want to scare him away, so he continued to do what he was doing, but tried to keep his guest in sight. When he looked toward the door again, Weaver was no longer there, and for a moment Bob felt disappointed. But then he saw him sitting on one of the ringside chairs. 3 minutes are up. Bob blew the whistle to send the young boxers to their corners. You let this guy in green shorts run all over the ring, Weaver noted. He should close the space, not retreat. Bob was delighted, but tried not to show it. Okay, he thought, we have to be careful. Weaver was too timid. He learned that the day they met at Jerry's, there was no way to push him away again. Actually, Weaver, this is something that everyone would like to learn. You are a master at this. Maybe you can show the guys what you mean. Weaver sat contemplating a simple request that could become the defining moment of his life. What brought him here? For the last 10 years, he lived almost like a hermit. He had no friends, no one to talk to or interact with regularly. In fact, the man asking him to step into the ring for the first time in a decade was the closest thing to a friend. Maybe the time has finally come, he thought. You can't live like this anymore. Weaver stood up and easily climbed between the ropes. Bob extended his hand to him. Thank you, he said with a smile. The former middleweight boxer shook his hand and nodded. Bob turned and blew loudly on the whistle hanging around his neck. Hey, everyone, stop for a minute and come here. The boys gathered on one side of the ring. I'd like to introduce you to Chuck Adams, better known in boxing circles as Weaver, one of the best middleweights to ever step into the ring. This was high praise, especially from a man whom every guy here considered his idol. Everyone was impressed. You could see it on their faces. Is it true? Someone asked. Hey, Weaver, said a young voice from the crowd. Bob continued. Dale and Allen sparred for a couple of rounds and Weaver noticed a problem with Dale's footwork. I want everyone to pay attention. Weaver, he said to the wiry man, I'm passing this on to you. Tell them what you told me. Show me how to do it. Weaver looked at Bob with concern. He doubted whether he wanted to do this. He wanted to just leave, but they're here to learn, Bob said. This is a class, your class, and no one can teach them better than you. Weaver took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. Okay, you two, he said, spreading his arms towards the two boys. Come here. Both boys walked to the center of the ring. So, your name is Dale? He asked the boy in green shorts. He nodded. You allow your opponent to always be the aggressor. He throws lefts and rights like he owns you, and right now he really does. You block well, but you are constantly on defense. Most of your strikes are counter strikes. Professional boxers wear 8-ounce gloves, and you can knock out your opponent with a counter punch just as easily as you can with any other punch. But these things, he said, picking up Dale's 16-ounce gloves, are more like pillows. You won't knock anyone out with them. You need to win points, and in an equal fight, the aggressor always wins. If you want to win, you have to take control of the fight. He stood in front of the other boy and took a fighting stance. Okay, let me show you. Come here, young man. Attack me the same way you attacked him. Allen looked at Bob, who nodded approvingly. The bully threw a punch at Weaver's head, but instead of dodging to the left as he had done to Dale, Weaver ducked under the blow and stepped forward and to the right, effectively blocking the boy's attack. You see what I mean, he explained. Now he has nowhere to go and is open to a right hook to the ribs, he added, miming a blow. Wow, was heard from the crowd of spectators. Okay, Dale, now it's your turn. When he goes left, you go right and take a step forward. When he goes right, you go left. Both boys met in the center of the ring and began sparring again, but this time it was different. Dale turned out to be a good student and moved the way Weaver showed him. Within seconds, he had Alan backing away. Like this. See, he used to chase you around in circles, but now you put him on the defensive. You are now in control of the fight. This is called shortening the ring. Oh yes, one more thing. You're great at using your right hand to block, but it's like using the queen in chess only for defense. You are not unlocking the full potential of your most valuable resource. Your opponent must respect your right hand. How will you teach him this if you never use it? I always preferred to dodge a blow or go under it. This way I could use both hands to attack at the same time. He immediately attracted the attention of young boxers. Bob noticed that the former professional boxer was starting to enjoy himself and decided to continue. That's how he got the nickname Weaver, he told the group of boys. Weaver, how about you help me tonight? How about you work with the guys in the ring while I help them with the bag? Bob suggested. Of course, he answered, already showing Alan how best to protect his chin. For the next hour, Bob watched as children lined up to work with his new assistant. Weaver might not have realized it yet, Bob thought, but he was already part of the team. The children really liked him, and he was great at working with them. Closing the room, Bob suggested that Weaver use the shower and then go have a drink together. He refused, saying that he did not have clean clothes, but asked to reschedule the meeting for another day. That night, on his way home, Weaver took a beer from the refrigerator and sat down in his sparsely furnished apartment. Over the past decade, he has experienced more emotional turmoil than a man should experience in a lifetime. After his wife left for someone else, he gave up. Despair, depression, thoughts of suicide haunted him again and again. Loneliness became his constant and only companion. The cruel irony was that, despite the devastation, it protected him from further wounds. Today was the first time in a long time that he enjoyed something. He liked Bob and the kids, but they were asking him to give something of himself, and he wasn't sure he had anything left to give. The next morning, Arlene didn't even have time to sit down at the table when the phone rang. It was Derek Hoover. After short greetings, he got down to business. Arlene, I know you said to stop investigating, but you see, I'm proud of my work, and it pissed me off that I couldn't find anything on Weaver's wife, so I kept looking. Derek, don't worry about it, Arlene replied. I'm sure it's even better this way. Arlene, I think I found her. What? She exclaimed. But, sorry, it was like a challenge. I couldn't stop until I found something. Well, where is she? Have you talked to her? No, I didn't talk. I decided to tell you first and find out what you want to do. She's in Peoria. Damn, Arlene thought, it's only 2.5 hours from here. But what will Bob say? He was pretty adamant about leaving Weaver's past alone. Are you sure it's her? Well, I'll have to talk to her to confirm for sure, but yeah, I'm pretty sure. It was one hell of a puzzle, but all the pieces fit. All I had was her married name, Christina Adams. I didn't know if she still used that name, her maiden name, or if she married her lover and took his last name. But the easiest way to find someone is their social security number. It remains the same regardless of the name, so I needed something with her maiden name. I started looking for their marriage certificate and found nothing. Eventually, I came across an old newspaper article that said she and Weaver got married in Vegas. I searched in Illinois. The note listed her name as Christina Evans, so I started looking for other standard documents. Birth certificate, social security number, driver's license, death certificate, census, all of it. And again, nothing. Damn, it felt like she didn't exist. Arlene listened to Derek's story with great interest. I tried looking for a marriage certificate again and again, but nothing. The newspaper article was in the sports section and did not indicate the exact date of their wedding. After further searching, I found Charles Adams, who married Christina Ivanishin. Did you know that she was not born in the USA? She was born in Ukraine. She was 3 years old when her parents moved here. No, I really don't know anything about this woman other than what the old man told us. She cheated on Weaver, got pregnant, and left for her lover. Well, it looks like she didn't stay with him long. As far as I can tell, she now lives alone with the child, Derek said. She's probably ashamed of what she did. That's why she's been hiding all this time, Arlene said with contempt. I'm not sure what exactly she was hiding, he replied. The fact is that she has two last names. Her family's real last name was Evanishin, but when they emigrated here, her father shortened and Americanized it to Evans. The problem is that they never officially changed it, so even though everyone knew them as Evans, all legal documents, including her social security card and marriage certificate, were under her real last name. Once I figured that out, everything else fell into place. So are you sure you found her? Is this not just a guess? No, I'm absolutely sure it's her, Arlene. Now the question is, what do you want to do with it? She works as a waitress and lives in an apartment in Peoria with her son. Arlene was pondering Derek's question when she heard Caroline's voice over the intercom. Arlene, Bob is on line 2. Okay, thanks, she replied. Derek, let me think, okay? Don't do anything yet. I haven't decided what to do yet. No problem, he responded. If you decide to meet her, let me know. I have her address. Otherwise, I consider my work complete. I couldn't leave it halfway. Thank you, Derek. You are a true professional, she told him. I really appreciate your work. I'll let you know when I make a decision. They said goodbye and Arlene switched the line. Hey, handsome. Hello, beautiful. How is my favorite lady this morning? Well, right now, I'd rather be naked in bed and have you make love to me. Otherwise, it's probably nothing, she answered, thinking what a pity it is that he doesn't see her smile. You and I are in this together, beauty. Hey, can you take a lunch break for about an hour? I have amazing news for you. Arlene tried to find out what had him so worried, but he wanted to tell everything in person. They agreed to meet for lunch at a diner around the corner. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Bob came into her office to take her to a restaurant 3 blocks away. Once the waitress took their orders, he eagerly began talking. You'll never guess who showed up in the hall yesterday. Bob, you're like a kid at Christmas. This can only mean one thing, Weaver. Okay, Mrs. Sherlock Holmes, yes, you're right, he teased. Did he say anything this time? Did you manage to talk to him? Oh, even better. We not only talked, he got into the ring and started working with the kids. What? Arlene's smile was now as wide as Bob's. Darling, you are amazing. How did you persuade him to do this? I didn't do anything. Remember what I said before? Once boxing gets into your bloodstream, it's hard to get rid of. I think he just needed something in life and couldn't turn his back on the sport anymore. The waitress brought coffee. Bob took a sip and continued enthusiastically. Honey, you should have seen him. He was great and the kids loved him. Do you think he'll come back? Maybe start helping you on a regular basis, Arlene asked. I sure hope so, he quickly replied. We talked a little yesterday after we closed the hall. I'm sure he'll come again today. You wanted to help him, dear. Looks like you got it. She was surprised. I didn't do anything. You're the one helping him. Arlene, if you hadn't shown interest and started asking me about him, none of this would have happened. If everything works out, he will only have you to thank. Arlene smiled modestly as she accepted Bob's praise, but she had doubts in her heart. Is it possible to close the book on Weaver's life without skipping an entire chapter? A huge chapter? He was preparing for the most important fight of his career. He could have become middleweight champion. Why did she cheat on him at such a decisive moment in their lives? Maybe there's something more to it. If Weaver knew the circumstances, knew the reasons for her betrayal, he could forgive her. Then he could really move on, maybe even find someone to share your life with. She debated whether to tell Bob what Derek had told her. What will he say? Damn. She knew exactly what he would say. Leave it. Don't touch the old memories. But what harm could there be from just going there and talking to her? By the time they returned to work, Arlene was even more torn by doubts about meeting Weaver's ex-wife. According to her boyfriend, it seemed that the ex-fighter was ready to take his life into his hands. But still, if she could just talk to that woman, if only to satisfy her own curiosity. But what will she tell Bob? He'll lose his temper if he finds out. So, she decided, I just won't tell him. I'll say that I'm going to Peoria to visit a friend. Once Arlene made her decision, she immediately contacted Derek. I thought you would call, he said, answering the call. I was able to get her phone number this morning, but I'm not sure it's worth calling you. A lot of time has passed, and we don't know what happened. I doubt she would want to talk to a stranger on the phone. Personally, you will have a better chance. I agree, she replied. But it's a long way. I don't want to come and find out that she is not at home or at work. Well, she doesn't earn that much, and she has a child to support, so it's unlikely that she travels around much. And she's at work from 4 to midnight 6 days a week. She has a day off on Monday. Derek, you're amazing, Arlene praised him. I'm just doing my job, he answered modestly with a smile that she felt even through the phone. Okay, just one thing please, don't tell Bob about this. Why? I thought you were doing this business together. He was surprised. That's what we're doing, or we're doing when we talk to Eric. But now he thinks we shouldn't delve into Weaver's past anymore. You know, Arlene, I think you're making a mistake by going behind his back, but I won't say anything. Thank you, Derek. I just want to go there and talk to her. At least I'll find out for myself if she really is the evil bitch that old man was talking about. What if she's not like that? He asked. Well, then I'll deal with it when the time comes, she replied. Arlene couldn't believe how nervous she was, knowing she was going to lie to Bob. I know what he'll say if he finds out what I'm going to do, she told herself. Everything is so good with us now, why spoil the relationship with a quarrel over this? Her hand literally shook as she reached for the phone. She dialed his extension and took a deep breath to calm herself. Bob Rawlings, he answered. Hello, honey, she sang into the phone. Hello, beauty. What a pleasant surprise. What's happened? I just wanted to know if you have any special plans for Saturday, other than spending the whole day enjoying your body. Yes, she laughed. Except this. Well, I heard about a new Italian restaurant in Rosemont. They say the food is great, and they make their own wine. I thought we could go there for dinner. And what? Oh, I think it'll be great. I have to make it in time for dinner. I'm going to Peoria this afternoon. To Peoria? What's there? Well, I have a friend there. She just called. She said she felt lonely, and I thought I could visit her for a while, but I'll be back in time for dinner. Bob thought she sounded a little strange, but it was difficult to understand over the phone. He told her to just call him when she got back, and she promised. That evening, Weaver came to the gym again, but this time with a bag containing sports items. Bob watched as he talked to the boys and explained to them the finer points of gentleman's sport. After the closing, Weaver reiterated his promise. He followed Bob to a small bar down the street from the gym. Zales. He was surprised when he saw the neon sign at the entrance. Yes, Tony's brother used to own this place. When he died, his son took over the business. They sat down and talked over beer. Bob really wanted to ask where Weaver had been for the last 10 years, but he didn't dare. Instead, they talked about the gym and the boys. Before leaving, Bob complimented him on his excellent job and asked if he would be there on Friday night. When Weaver answered in the affirmative, Bob ventured a little further. What about next week? He asked. And the weeks after it? And for that one? He wanted Weaver to become an official trainer in the SIO organization. Weaver had been thinking about this proposal for a long time. It didn't take him long to respond that he would be happy to donate his time. Arlene rolled over onto her side and began to blindly search for the alarm clock with her hand. She had not yet opened her eyes, relying solely on her sense of touch. Her fingers found their target, and the persistent buzzing stopped. She opened one eye slightly. 6 in the morning. Oh, she moaned loudly. It was earlier than usual, even for work. Of course, she didn't work in Peoria. She took a shower, cooked breakfast, put on her makeup, and was on her way by 7:30. All the way, Arlene couldn't help but feel guilty about lying to Bob. The address Derek gave her was loaded into her car's GPS. Following his instructions, she pulled into the parking lot and, hearing the navigator's voice announcing her arrival, felt as if he was reproaching her. There's still time to turn around, she told herself with a sigh of uncertainty. But then she'll never know why. She walked up the stairs to apartment number 7 and rang the doorbell. A few moments later, the door opened and a dark-haired woman with a curious expression on her face stood in the threshold. Yes, how can I help? She was not at all what Arlene expected. Weaver's despondency had formed a preconceived notion of a tall, exotic beauty with a stunning figure, but the woman in front of her was a few inches shorter. She was thin, with her hair tied up in a ponytail. Her appearance was quite ordinary, but Arlene thought it was probably due to the lack of makeup. Um, excuse me, that is, you are Christina Ivanishina, who was married to Chuck Adams, the boxer. The woman's face took on a stern look as she looked appraisingly at the uninvited guest. Who are you? Journalist or something like that? She asked with mockery in her voice. No, no, Arlene answered quickly. I'm his friend. I just wanted to talk to you. Now the woman's expression became wary. Friend, whose? Weaver, your ex-husband, Arlene answered. She noticed how the woman's face turned pale, and she seemed about to lose consciousness. Are you okay? Arlene asked, entering the apartment and helping the woman sit on a chair. Do you want water or something? Christina nodded. She felt dizzy and tried not to lose consciousness. Arlene quickly looked around and saw the kitchen. She rushed there, started opening cabinet doors until she found a glass and filled it with water from the tap. Here you go, she said, handing the glass to Christina. She took a few sips, then lowered the glass and held it in her lap with both hands. She closed her eyes, took a few deep breaths, then drank more water. What? It was still difficult for her to speak, and her breathing remained ragged. What do you mean when you say you are his friend? Do you know where my husband is? Is he alive? Yes, of course, he is alive. He lives. Arlene stopped. This is exactly what Bob warned her about. She didn't know how evil this woman was or what she was capable of. She had broken Weaver's heart once, and Arlene wasn't about to let her do it again. No, sorry, but I won't tell you where he is. What do you mean you won't tell me? Christina shouted. You have to tell me. This is my husband. He has a son whom he has never seen. Her voice sounded more and more desperate. His son. Arlene's voice was full of contempt when she heard this statement. As I heard, this boy is the son of your lover, the same one with whom you cheated on Weaver. Suddenly, the woman jumped up and hit Arlene hard in the face. For the first time in her life, she was hit. She was never beaten, even as a child. She pressed her hand to her cheek in shock, feeling the pain. Christina was beside herself with rage. How dare you come to my house and accuse me of such filth? Get out of here. Go away, she cried out emotionally before falling back into her chair. Almost in a panic, Arlene headed for the door. Reaching for the handle, she suddenly stopped. Something didn't add up. The woman who was now crying on the chair did not at all resemble the one she and Bob had imagined from the description of the old man from Grand Rapids. She touched her cheek again, feeling the heat coming from the blow, and wondered what to do next. Then she turned and walked past the grieving woman back into the kitchen. She noticed an empty coffee pot on the counter and began looking for what she would need to make coffee. What are you doing? Christina asked through tears. I told you to leave. Arlene had already decided that she would not allow herself to be intimidated by the woman. Now is the time to use your skills and take control of the situation. Sit down, she ordered. I'll make us some coffee, and then we'll talk frankly. Still crying, but not as much, Christina grabbed a box of tissues and sat down at the kitchen table. The coffee filters are in the cabinet on the left, she said. Coffee below you. She watched as Arlene got busy. Having finally calmed down, she finally found her voice. "What makes you think that I cheated on Chuck and that little Charlie is not his son?" she asked, wiping her eyes. Arlene didn't answer right away. She had her own questions. She took 2 cups and poured the coffee. "Christina, why did you leave the training camp right before the Weaver fight?" The two women sat and talked for almost 3 hours. Christina's story was diametrically opposed to Eric Schiefer's, and by the time they finished, they both had tears in their eyes. As Arlene was about to leave, little Charlie ran in. School was closed for the summer, and he played with other children from the neighborhood. "Mom, I'm hungry," he announced. "Charlie, where are your manners? Don't you see we have a guest? Say hello, too." She stopped short, realizing that she didn't know the young woman's name. "Arlene," she said. "Arlene Reynolds." "Hello, Miss Reynolds," he greeted politely. If Arlene had any doubts about Christina's story, they disappeared when she saw the slender, brown-eyed boy with gray eyes. "I'll make you something to eat in a minute," Christina told her son, "as soon as I say goodbye to Miss Reynolds." Now friends, they went to the door to talk away from children's ears. "Christina, do you trust me?" Arlene asked. "Yes, probably. And what?" "I want you to give me some time to figure this out," she explained. "I know you've been waiting 10 years, but Weaver's been going through a rough patch, and I'm afraid if you just show up with little Charlie, it might break him." The desperate woman reluctantly agreed to wait before coming to Chicago, but made Arlene promise that she would call frequently and keep her informed of developments regarding her husband. Arlene found it difficult to concentrate on the road as she drove home. Now she really had a problem. She was going to meet that bitch from Eric's story, satisfy her curiosity, and return without Bob finding out. Obviously, this plan was now impossible. She understood that she had done wrong, and now she would have to admit her deception. But she thought, how angry could he be when he found out the real story? Late at night, a nervous Arlene sat at a small table opposite the man with whom she was beginning to fall in love. She knew that she was a bad conversationalist. She was always thinking about something else. She wondered why Bob hadn't asked her what was wrong. She also knew that the longer she waited to confess, the worse things would get. The waiter had just placed coffee in front of them. "Bob, I have to confess something to you," she began, stuttering. "Oh, yes," he grinned. "And what?" "I, uh, lied to you last week when I told you I was going to Peoria to see a friend today," she admitted quietly. Bob suddenly became serious and looked at her with a cold expression. "What do you mean you lied? Where did you go then?" "I went to Peoria, but this... Look, I know you're going to be mad, but I dated Christina, Weaver's wife." Arlene had never seen Bob angry before. That will change soon. "What? His wife? How are you?" "We talked about this." "Damn it, Arlene. You agreed no digging into Weaver's past." "What the hell, Arlene?" "God!" he exclaimed, trying to control his voice. "For the first time in 10 years, this guy is just starting to come back to life, and you." "Bob, please. Let me explain. It's not like his coach said. She loves him. She wants to come to Chicago and be with him." Bob couldn't believe his ears. How could she do this? "I can't believe it." "What's wrong with you? Hasn't he suffered enough?" "No. You should have gone behind my back and found the only person in the world who could hurt him even more. The only person who broke the heart of one of the kindest guys I know." Arlene knew he would be angry, but she didn't expect his anger to reach such a level. "Bob," she begged, "listen to me, please. The boy is his son. I saw him. There is no doubt about it. Weaver is the father." These words surprised Bob, but after everything he had heard about Weaver's ex, he didn't want to believe it so easily. "What do you mean, there's no doubt about it? You don't know that this is his child. How can you be sure? What? Are you going to tell me you saw their DNA results?" Arlene wasn't sure what angered Bob more, her going behind his back or her fear that Weaver would be hurt again. She suspected it was both, but she needed to convince him she was right. She was sure that everything would end well. "Oh, Bob, just one look," He has Weaver's build, his hair, and his eyes are the same gray. I'm telling you, Bob, you just have to see him. His name is also Charles, but she calls him Charlie. Bob didn't want to listen anymore. He was irritated and disappointed. The waiter had already swiped his credit card. He signed the check and left a tip. "Let's go," he said, standing up sharply. "It's time to leave." The walk to Arlene's apartment was quiet. She looked out the window so that he wouldn't see the tears in her eyes. She knew that her feelings for Bob were stronger than she had felt for anyone before, but she didn't realize how strong until she was faced with the possibility of losing him. Like a true gentleman, he walked her to the door, but refused to enter. "Sorry, Bob. I'm sorry I lied to you, but—" "Me too," he said before she could finish. I had high hopes for us, Arlene, and now I'm not so sure. I can't even think about being with someone I can't trust, with someone who lies to me and goes behind my back." He saw tears in her eyes as he spoke, but he couldn't do anything about it. He shook his head sadly, turned around, and walked back to his car. That night, Arlene cried herself to sleep. The following Monday began with Arlene's phone ringing early in the morning as soon as she arrived at the office. She knew even before she picked up the phone that it was Derek. "Good morning, Arlene." His voice sounded cheerful, not at all like her answer. "Hello, Derek. Oh, I see. I can hear from your tone that things have gone badly. What happened? She wasn't home." "No, she was at home. We talked for a long time," Arlene said, and began to tell Derek Christina's story. Derek listened with interest, but from her sullen voice, he realized that something was wrong. He waited for her to finish. "Arlene, something happened. Something is wrong. Maybe I can help." "I don't think there's anything we can do this time, Derek. She wants to come to Chicago. She wants him back. Bob would have found out what I did sooner or later, so I told him about it last Saturday at dinner." "Ooh," he commented. "Yes, oh, I thought the good news would outweigh the bad," but he was still angry. I don't know, Derek," she said, starting to cry again. "I think I've lost him. I knew you'd get into trouble. I know Bob, he respects strength, but hates lies. It would be better for you to tell him what you're going to do, and if he doesn't like it, he can go along with it than to lie to him. I know, it's just, she sobbed. "I didn't expect this. I thought she was going to be a bitch. I just wanted to know why she left Weaver. I thought if I knew the whole story, I could tell him something that would help him forget it. I know, Arlene, your intentions were good, but the way you acted. Do you want me to talk to Bob, try to smooth things over?" "Thank you, Derek, but I ruined everything myself, and it's up to me to fix it. But I will keep your offer in mind, as a last resort, if you don't mind. I can't lose him, Derek, I just can't. I love him. I know, and the best thing about you is that he loves you too." "Really, Derek? Are you sure?" she asked hopefully. "I'm sure of it," he confirmed. Later that evening, Weaver was in the gym when Bob walked in. He briefly watched as the former professional fighter passed on the knowledge and skills gained from years of experience in the ring. Bob took great satisfaction in knowing that he was at least partly responsible for the look of pride on Weaver's time-stained face. Even after endless hours of thought and meditation over the weekend, Bob still couldn't figure out how to deal with the problems Arlene had caused. Why did she stick her nose in where she wasn't asked? He asked himself angrily. After 10 years of torment, this man's soul finally began to enjoy life. And now? "Hey, coach," a young voice sounded behind him. "Will Weaver stay here? He's a cool guy." Bob turned around and smiled. It was the first smile since Saturday evening. "Yes, Jimmy, I hope he stays forever." "Cool," Jimmy responded joyfully. Over the next 3 weeks, Bob watched Weaver's amazing transformation. 2 or 3 times a week, they went out for beer after the gym closed. They talked mostly about boys. It was during one of these conversations that Bob saw Weaver smile for the first time. Each evening, Weaver became more involved in the program. This meant not only teaching the mechanics of the sport, but also caring about the lives of the boys. Sometimes, over a glass of beer, He would ask Bob about family life or some boy's dreams, and Bob never disappointed him, always knowing the answer. A bond was forming between the two men, a bond of trust, loyalty, and friendship, a bond that Bob prayed would not break. He wondered if he was already betraying that friendship by not telling Weaver about his ex-wife. Even with the changes, Bob knew his friend's past was still lurking beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Arlene was busy with her own problems. She hadn't spoken to Bob since the night he left her standing at the door. She deeply regretted lying to him, but she wasn't going to let it ruin her goal. She was convinced of Christina's love for her husband and knew in her heart that they belonged together. With each passing week, Arlene heard the woman's desperation sound more and more in their telephone conversations. She made a promise to Christina, but had no idea how to keep it. She wasn't about to go behind Bob's back again. She still prayed for him to come back to her, but one more betrayal and she knew it would never happen. She had just finished a conversation with an increasingly impatient Christina and was almost crying from powerlessness, not knowing what to do, when fate suddenly smiled at her. "Arlene, Bob is on the first line," she heard over the intercom. Arlene literally rushed to the phone. "Bob," she exclaimed. "Bob, I'm so glad you called." "Don't rejoice ahead of time," he answered dryly, immediately knocking the ground out from under her feet. "I'm just calling to find out Christina's address. You said she lives in Peoria, right?" "Yes, but why do you need her address?" "I want to go and talk to her." Arlene could tell from the tone of his voice that he had not changed his mind. He still believed that Weaver's ex-wife was an evil woman who would hurt him again if she got the chance. What did he want to talk to her about? He wouldn't threaten her. That wasn't his style. But he could try to convince her to leave Weaver alone. Suddenly, Arlene saw an opportunity. "Bob, I won't give you her address, but I can take you to her," she said. Bob sighed. He knew Derek could find Christina's address. He could just call him and get to know him. The truth was that he missed Arlene, and this was the perfect excuse to spend time with her without giving in to his pride. Okay, you win," he conceded. "Let's go in my car. I'll pick you up on Saturday morning." "Let it be at 8, she answered. "I'll call her and tell her that we'll come so she'll be at home." When Bob hung up, he still wasn't sure if he was doing the right thing. Again, he cursed Arlene's interference. Why did everything have to be so damn complicated, he asked himself. On Saturday morning, when Bob picked Arlene up from her apartment, everything was very platonic. There were no tearful meetings. She knew better than to try to kiss him or show any affection. She was just glad to have the opportunity to be with him and apologize again. They rode in silence for the first half hour of the ride, until Arlene finally mustered the courage. "Bob, at the risk of you stopping the car and making me walk home, I want to say again how sorry I am. I shouldn't have lied to you." He was silent for several moments. "We already discussed this," he finally answered. "After talking with Eric, you agreed that we should leave it. And then you did, behind my back, exactly what we both decided not to do. How am I supposed to trust you again after this?" Before she could say anything, he continued. "And then you make it even worse. You want to let this woman back into Weaver's life. No matter what she told you, she broke his heart. You saw it yourself. He was completely devastated. He has no reason left to live at all. You should see him now. You wouldn't recognize him. He even smiles sometimes. He jokes with the kids, and they adore him. He is a new person with a new outlook on life, and you want to risk ruining it all again. I won't let it happen, Arlene. I won't let it happen." Arlene was worried by his last statement. "What are you going to do when we arrive?" "I hope to convince her not to get involved with him." "Are you saying that she loves him?" "Let's see. If she loves him, she will leave him alone and let him move on with his life." "But—" Arlene bit her tongue. She knew she couldn't convince Bob that Christina really loved her husband, but she prayed that Christina could. What she could do was try to solve her own problem. "Bob, I'm sorry I lied to you, but I really thought I could help. I believe the reason Weaver is having such a hard time is because he never got any answers. He never closed this chapter of his life. I thought if I talked to Christina, woman to woman, to get her point of view, she might say something that would ease Weaver's pain. For example? Asked Bob. I don't know. Maybe nothing. But I wouldn't know until I talked to her. I also believed in Eric's story. I thought she was probably as much of a bitch as he described her. But perhaps she had another reason to leave. Something that could ease Weaver's pain. I wouldn't have known this until I talked to her. She looked at Bob and could tell from his face that he didn't think her idea was worth it. But she wasn't going to give up. Bob, I knew you didn't want me to talk to her, but I really didn't see how it would hurt. If I learned something that could help Weaver, great. If not, well, no harm done. No one would even know that I went. And then when I talked to her, I realized that I had a problem. That's the thing, Arlene. It's not your problem. It's Weaver's problem. You created it, but he will have to deal with it. And you're wrong about no one getting hurt. He will get hurt. Again. Arlene remained silent. She knew that nothing she said would change his mind. All she could do now was give Christina a chance. She sighed in relief at his next statement. Let's not talk about this anymore, Bob said, shaking his head. He turned on the radio, and they spent the last hour of their trip listening to rock and roll. When they arrived at Christina's apartment door, Bob rang the bell. A moment later, the door was opened by a little boy. Hello, Miss Reynolds. Come on in. Mom is in the kitchen. Hello, Charlie. This is Mr. Rawlings. He is my friend. Charlie immediately extended his hand. It's very nice to meet you, Mr. Rawlings. Bob shook his hand. Hey, you have a pretty strong handshake, Charlie. The boy smiled. Thank you, he said proudly. Mom said that you would come to talk, and that it was better for me to go away. She's there in the kitchen, making coffee, he said, pointing towards the kitchen. I'll go play. With these words, he headed towards the door. Bye, he said as he walked. Bob didn't know what he was expecting, but it certainly wasn't this. Charlie was polite and respectful. He may have thought that a woman capable of what she did to Weaver would have raised her child very differently. At that moment, Christina appeared at the kitchen door. So far, this has not been at all what Bob imagined. She didn't look like the tough, rude woman he pictured her to be. Although it was clear from her appearance that she was far from a society lady, her face was kind, almost naive, with a slight touch of fear in her eyes. She smiled at Arlene a little nervously. Hi, Arlene, she said, hugging her lightly. Then she walked up to Bob and extended her hand. Mr. Rawlings, nice to meet you. Arlene called and said she was coming with someone who knew my husband. Bob smiled discreetly as he shook her hand. He wondered how aware she was of the true purpose of his visit. What did Arlene tell her? Christina was clearly nervous. It couldn't be hidden. She poured some coffee and joined her two guests at the table. Mr. Rawlings, she began, I know why you came. Arlene said you would try to talk me out of meeting my husband. For the last 10 years, I had no idea where he was, whether he was even alive or already dead. If he was alive, I couldn't understand why he would abandon me and our child. Although, she thought for a second, I wasn't even sure if he knew about the child. I never had time to tell him. I knew nothing about the lies he was told until Arlene came to see me a few weeks ago. Please, now that I've found it, you can't expect me to give it up again. You can't be that cruel. Mrs. Sorry, I don't even know how to address you. Have you ever divorced him? No, and as far as I know, he didn't divorce me either, Christina answered. Yes, I doubt he ever filed for divorce. I don't think it even occurred to him, Bob confirmed. He took a sip of coffee and wondered how best to continue the conversation. Look, Mrs. Adams, I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm sure the last 10 years have been very difficult for you, but— Difficult, she interrupted. You have no idea what difficult means, Mr. Rawlings. Before he was born, I almost lost my baby twice due to the stress of not knowing what happened to my husband. When he disappeared, I was in despair. I called everyone I knew, trying to find out where he was, but no one wanted to talk to me. I cried day and night for months. After Charlie was born, the guardianship authorities wanted to take him away. At the hospital, I was diagnosed with clinical depression, and they said that I could not take care of the child alone. They considered me an unfit mother. A tear appeared in her eyes, which she immediately wiped away and continued. I had a friend here who said she would help. So before they could come and take my baby, I left Chicago and moved to Peoria. I used my maiden name to make it harder for them to find me. My friend helped me get a job as a waitress where she herself worked. We split shifts so that one of us could always stay home with the baby while the other worked. It took me 3 years to piece my life back together. 3 years of tears, 3 years of prayers. In the end, I gave up. I accepted that I would never see Chuck again. He will never meet his son. And now you come here and say that you know where he is, but you don't want me to see him. How can you even ask me for this? Bob looked her straight in the eye. As far as he could tell, she was sincere. He looked at Arlene, who had an expression on her face as if she wanted to say, "I told you so." Nothing worked out. Why did you tell Eric Schiefer that you were running away with your lover? Why did you tell him that you were carrying another man's child? I didn't say so, she answered categorically. I didn't say that. I don't know where he got this lie from, she sobbed. 2 hours and 2 cups of coffee later, Christina finished telling her story to Bob. He didn't know anything for sure anymore. Hearing the story from Arlene and seeing Christina's emotions as she told it herself were two different things. He was inclined to believe her. But even if he believed it, it wouldn't change anything. He was still convinced that Weaver might run away again at the mere mention of her name. Christina saw the conflict on his face. "Mr. Rawlings, I know you and Arlene want what's best for Chuck, but Charlie needs a father, and Chuck needs to know he has a son." Arlene said he believed the lies he was told. "It pains me to know that he could believe that about me, but I'm not going to judge him for it. I can't even imagine what he's been through over the years, and I understand that you don't want to cause him any more pain. But I'll tell you what Arlene said. If you don't find a way to tell him about Charlie and me, I'll go find him myself. If he refuses to believe me and continues to believe lies, there is nothing I can do about it. But Charlie has the right to know his father." On the way back, Bob was silent. Arlene waited 20 minutes before speaking, but she couldn't take it anymore. "Well, do you believe her?" "I don't know," he answered. "Whether it's true or not, I think she herself believes what she says." "Oh, Bob, come on. Do you really think she made it all up and then convinced herself it was true?" "Arlene, at this stage, who knows what really happened? It seems to me that she could have completely broken down mentally. Our mind can play tricks on us. Perhaps the guy she ran off with left her and she couldn't get over it. Maybe she just couldn't cope and her mind blocked out the traumatic reality." "Bob, that's too many maybes," Arlene said. "It happens. Hell, if she'd been telling herself that for 10 years, it wasn't hard to imagine how she could begin to believe it. Her story just doesn't add up. She claims she didn't tell Eric about her lover, but if that's true, where did he get the idea? Weaver was like a son to him. Eric had to know how much this guy loved his wife, how much it would hurt him to find out that she was cheating on him. Eric wouldn't have said that if he didn't believe it. And what about the part where she said someone broke into their apartment while she and Weaver were at training camp? She claims that things were scattered and broken, but nothing was stolen. Who would break into an apartment and not steal anything? None of this makes sense, Arlene. And I believe her, Arlene said stubbornly. Bob sighed. I don't know. I wish I could talk to Weaver about this, find out his side of the story, but I hesitate to broach the topic. He's come so far. We started to become good friends. For the first time in 10 years, he is happy. I don't want to ruin it. The next 2 weeks were real torture for Bob. He was too tense. He was constantly tormented by nervousness. His stomach was in knots so that he could not eat properly, and at night he could not calm down enough to fall asleep. He was still angry at Arlene for lying. He loved her and hoped for a long-term relationship, but now he wasn't sure. Yes, it was a little lie, but it was still a lie, and here are the problems it caused. Another headache: what to do with Christina. She's right, Weaver must know he has a son. But is it his son? Charlie had Weaver's features, but how can you be sure? Is her story true, or is it the imagination of a disturbed mind? Or worse, did she have some kind of ulterior motive? And as if all this wasn't enough, he was assigned an important project at work. He was on the edge and was already starting to show it. Hey, coach, can you help me with the 1-2-3-2 combination? Coach? Trainer? Eh? Oh, sorry, Tommy. What did you say? I asked if you could help me with the 1-2-3-2 combination. Are you okay, coach? If you're busy, I can ask Weaver to help. No, no, Tommy. Sorry, I just have a lot on my mind. Give me a minute to drink some water, and I'll go to the heavy bag. Okay, coach, the young man replied. Weaver was only 10 feet away, helping another guy tie his gloves, and saw the exchange between Bob and Tommy. It doesn't take a psychoanalyst to figure out that something is bothering his only friend. He had never seen Bob give less than 110% to his children. Later that night, Weaver and Bob sat across from each other at a table at Zales. Here you go, guys, the waitress said, placing 2 beers in front of them. Weaver, although no longer the stern, grief-stricken man he had been a few months ago, was still not used to speaking in veiled ways. What's wrong with you, Bob? Lately you've been acting like a kid who lost his dog. What's the matter? Bob was initially reluctant to say anything, but quickly changed his mind, deciding that this might be the opportunity he had been looking for. He knew he had to be careful. Yes, problems with women, he said. He could almost hear the lump in Weaver's throat. It had been a long time since Weaver had really thought about his past, but the mere mention of his problems with women brought back old pain. He took a deep breath. The last few months had helped him more than he realized. That pretty lady who thinks you can see the future in a glass of whiskey, he asked. Bob simply nodded slowly. What's happened? Did she leave you? No, no, nothing like that. The thing is, I'm thinking about leaving her. She lied to me, and if there's one thing I can't stand, it's lying. I understand, Weaver commented. Of course, I don't know anything about the situation or what the lie was about, but everyone lies from time to time. We need to look at everything from different angles, at the components that led to this, at the reasons. Was the lie for her selfish purposes or to protect you from discomfort? Yes, lying is bad, but nothing is black and white, Bob. He took a sip from his beer bottle before continuing, Do you love her? Again, Bob nodded. Yes, Weaver, I do. It's just. Trust is so important to me, and now I'm not sure I can trust her. Weaver chuckled. Damn, when it comes to trust, there are no guarantees, my friend. Trust me, I know. He chuckled again. Damn, I would trust Chris with my life, and look at what happened. His voice faded to a sad monotone as he stared at the table. It was the first time he had said her name out loud since everything happened. Bob was also surprised to hear his friend say her name. It was obvious from the look that the wounds were still bleeding. After a few seconds of silence, the former middleweight looked back at his friend. Listen, buddy, when it comes to callousness towards women, you look at the king himself. Don't be like me. Part of love is the ability to forgive. Of course, within reasonable limits, he added after a short pause. Life can be lonely if there is no one to share it with. If you love her and she loves you, don't let little lies come between you. Go to her. Say you love me. Don't waste your life alone like me. I live this way because I have no choice, but if you push her away, you will be a bigger fool than I ever was, he said, looking at Bob before taking another sip of his beer. Bob still wasn't sure if he should continue the conversation, but he knew there might not be another chance. And since Weaver himself started talking about her, he decided to take a risk. Weaver, if Chris walked in here right now, what would you say to her? I would ask her why, he answered without hesitation. That's it. Just why. Bob didn't sleep a wink that night. He could give Weaver the opportunity to ask the question, but could he handle the answer? Will he be able to bear meeting her? It was clear from their conversation that Weaver had a hard time living alone. If only he could look into Christina's soul. A little after 9 in the morning, Arlene looked up from her desk. Bob, she said in surprise. She had not seen or heard from him since they returned from Peoria. I'm not sure if this is the right decision, but why don't you call Christina and see if she can come? Bob, are you serious? This is amazing. What changed your mind? She asked enthusiastically. I talked to Weaver last night. I asked him what he would say to Christina if he had the chance. He said he would ask her only one question: why. You could see his pain when he talked about her, but I think he deserves the opportunity to ask her about it. As his attitude towards Chris softened, she couldn't help but ask, does this mean you forgive me? No, Arlene, that doesn't mean that at all. You did something behind my back that you knew I wouldn't approve of, and then you lied to cover it up. The hope on her face faded, and her expression became sad again. Her appearance did not escape Bob's attention. He saw the sadness in her eyes and the slouch of her shoulders. He could almost physically feel her suffering, but he needed to convey to her how he felt about her deception. However, he was not made of stone, and his own heart was breaking too. He walked over and sat on the chair opposite her desk. Look, I know you meant well, he told her. But if I'm going to give my heart to someone, I have to be sure that person will be honest and loyal to me. This may sound like something out of a scout manual, but if I dedicate my life to someone, I expect the same in return. Bob, I understand. I let you down. Yes, I let you down, Arlene. Give me another chance, please. I, I know I shouldn't have lied to you. Everything was going so well for us, and I didn't want our first quarrel to ruin everything. I would prefer a quarrel to a lie, he interrupted. I know. Derek told me the same thing. I shouldn't have lied to you, and I promise I won't do it again. Please give me one more chance. We'll talk about it, he said, sighing. In the meantime, why don't you call Christina and see if she can come to Chicago for a day or two? Let him take Charlie with him. I'll pay for their motel room. No need. I have a spare bedroom. They can stay with me, Arlene said. Okay, he replied, heading towards the door again. Let me know when they arrive. 2 hours later, Bob's secretary said Miss Reynolds was on the first line. Hello. Bob, she'll be here tonight. Well, come on, she's not wasting any time. Yes, you should have heard her cry when I told her. How do we organize this? Where and when will they meet? Bob told her his plan. The next evening, everything was ready. After a good workout at the gym, Bob and Weaver sat in the Zale bar, talking leisurely over a glass of beer. Outside in the parking lot, Arlene and a very nervous Christina waited for the signal. Arlene arranged for Charlie to stay with a friend. Bob took advantage of the short pause in the conversation. Weaver, the other day you said that if you could talk to your wife, you would ask her why. He took a deep breath to gain courage. What if I can arrange this? Weaver looked at his friend's worried face. He had no idea why he was asking such a question, but he answered anyway. I would owe you a huge debt of gratitude, my friend, he said sadly. Bob pressed the send button on his phone, and a one-word message was sent. Okay. I hope you're serious about this because you'll have this opportunity, Bob said anxiously. He heard the pain in her voice as she answered. I don't know. I don't know, she sobbed. I returned home on the day of that quarrel. When I saw that everything was upside down, I thought that someone had broken in and I was afraid to stay there, but I didn't want to miss your call. I waited by the phone all night. I got scared when I didn't hear anything from you. I was sure something had happened. I was afraid you were hurt. I tried to call Eric, but couldn't find him. The newspapers wrote that the fight was canceled. I couldn't understand what was happening. No one knew anything or simply did not want to talk. Someone said they read that you were sick. I was in a panic. After a couple of weeks, without hearing a word from you, I began to have pain and I was afraid for the child. As a result, I ended up in the hospital again. The doctors said that if I don't take care of myself, I could lose our child. I didn't know what to do, who to call. I was so lonely, she finished, bursting into tears. Weaver's heart broke. Forgive me, he said. reaching across the table and taking her hand. I, I don't know what to say. I've been through hell. You never complained, but I knew that you were always afraid before fights, and also the time I spent training. I thought that because of this you found someone else, that's why you left. I blamed boxing for losing you and vowed never to step into the ring again. I wandered around, taking any odd job I could find. I, I went to California and worked in the harvest. Spent some time on a drilling platform in the Gulf of Mexico, even worked on a shrimp boat in the Florida Keys. A couple of years ago, I moved back to Chicago. First of all, I went to our old house. I stood on the sidewalk in front of him and reminisced about the good times. Now he was wiping away his tears. A few tables away, two people were closely watching what was happening, trying not to show interest. I wish I knew what they were talking about, Arlene said. Well, Weaver hasn't run away from the bar yet. That's probably a good sign, Bob said with a nervous chuckle. Weaver was almost afraid to ask about the baby. If something happened to him, if he didn't survive, he needed to muster all his courage. Chris, what happened to the child? She wiped the tears from her eyes again and suddenly smiled widely. I named him Charles, but his name is Charlie, she said proudly. God, Chuck, he looks just like you. Strong and brave, like his father. He was the only one who supported me all these years. Weaver felt his soul melt as he realized what he had said. You mean that I have a son? He squeezed out, gasping for breath. Oh, yes, of course there is, she replied with a wide smile. I'm a father, he said loudly, standing up and almost knocking over his chair. All eyes in the bar turned to the flustered former boxer. Muffled congratulations were heard from different directions. Christina also stood up, and Weaver walked over to her. He hugged her as tightly as he could, and their tears flowed like a waterfall as he covered her face with kisses. When? When can I meet him? When will I see my son? Weaver asked. Exactly, Bob muttered quietly. Arlene looked at him with an optimistic expression. Well, she asked with a smile as she watched the couple reunite. Bob smiled back at her. Okay, maybe it worked out this time, but don't lie to me anymore. Arlene couldn't meet his gaze. Her heart sank with excitement. Does this mean that he has forgiven her? Bob, I've never said this to any man. I love you. I hope you'll give me another chance to prove it. The last few months have been the loneliest months of my life. If you give me another chance, you can be sure that I will never deceive you again, she said sincerely. Meanwhile, Weaver and Christina approached their table. Their tear-stained faces shone with happiness. Bob, I don't know how I can thank you enough, Weaver said, stammering. No need to thank me, buddy, he replied. Do you see this woman? He nodded at Arlene. Unlike us, she really knows how to see the future in a glass of whiskey. She's the one who found Christina for you. Thank her. The first thing Weaver thought about was his behavior on the day they first met. I don't think I ever apologized for how rude I was that night at Jerry's, he said, embarrassed. No need for an apology, Weaver, she replied. I'm just glad it worked out. For both of us, she said, looking at Bob. So, what are the plans? Asked Bob. I don't know, Weaver replied. I want to see my son. Chris says she brought it. He's here. His voice trembled with emotion as he said the last word. Arlene glanced at her watch. Yes, but it's already after midnight. I know you're all nervous, but he's probably already asleep. He is now with Jeannie, my neighbor. I'm sure she's already put him to bed. If I were you, I would spend time alone with my wife to repair the marriage, she said with a smile. Neither Christina nor Weaver could hide their mixture of excitement and nervousness. That's a good idea, Weaver agreed, looking at his long-lost wife. My apartment is so-so, he said, but Christina never gave him a chance to finish his statement. Her lips, pressed tightly against his, told him that she didn't care about his apartment. Arlene called a neighbor to make sure Charlie was okay. She confirmed that he was sleeping peacefully on her couch and was getting ready to go to bed. Before leaving the bar, they all agreed to meet at Arlene's apartment the next morning. As the newly reunited couple left, Bob turned to the attractive woman sitting at the table. "It would probably be easier for me to just stay at your place for the night. What do you think?" Chuck Adams couldn't contain his excitement as he watched his wife get ready for bed. Her every gesture, every movement revived vivid images of their past in his memory. It was as if he were reliving those moments when their love was so fresh, strong, and filled with passion. For a moment, he allowed himself to think that nothing had changed over the years, that time had not robbed them of their ability to be intimate. She stopped when she felt his gaze and turned to him. Something both familiar and new shone in her eyes. A warm smile touched her lips. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked softly, sitting down on the bed. Her voice was as gentle as he remembered it from the days of their first dates. He looked away, trying to hide his sudden excitement, but soon looked at her again. "It's just. You're beautiful," he replied, feeling the warmth spread through his chest. Words seemed insufficient to express everything he felt at that moment. She blushed a little, but didn't look away. "Beautiful? Chuck, it's been years." "You're exaggerating," she said, but her voice sounded uncertain, as if she didn't fully believe her own words. He smiled, reaching out and touching her palm. "No, Christina, you remain the same one I fell in love with then, and which I love now." His words were quiet, almost a whisper, but each of them penetrated straight into her heart. She looked at his hand that was holding hers and smiled slightly as she squeezed his fingers. "It's been so long. Sometimes I think we've lost something important," she admitted, looking down. Her voice trembled, revealing the tension she was hiding. He moved closer, putting his arm around her shoulders. "We haven't lost anything, Christina. We just forgot how to be together. But it's still here, in us, and I want us to get it back," he said, looking into her eyes. His voice was determined, and she felt her doubts begin to dissolve. They talked for a long time, remembering the moments that once brought them together. The words flowed smoothly, easily, as if the walls they had built around themselves for years began to crumble. He remembered how he loved her smile, how she laughed at his jokes, how they dreamed together. She shared her fears, saying how afraid she was that she would never be able to feel that close to him again. Chuck listened patiently, holding her hand. He understood how important it was to be there now, not to rush things. As their conversation died down, he leaned down to kiss her temple softly. "I never stopped loving you," he whispered, and the words sounded like a promise. Christina looked at him. Her eyes were shining with tears, but they were tears of relief and joy. She nodded, allowing herself to smile. "And I never stopped loving you," she replied, resting her head on his shoulder. This night was the beginning of something new, albeit familiar, for them. They found each other anew, step by step, with tenderness and care that neither years nor the distance between their hearts could take away. A few miles away, a similar scene was taking place at Arlene's apartment. Bob hugged her. Their eyes closed as his lips met hers. Arlene felt her pulse quicken as he gently caressed her neck. Their tongues fought for dominance as the fire within them grew hotter. "God, I want you so much," Arlene whispered, tugging at his earlobe with her teeth. "Take me, Bob." Arlen and Bob looked at each other, feeling the tension between them reach its breaking point. Their emotions found vent in an embrace full of passion and tenderness. They gave themselves completely to this moment, feeling their connection become deeper and stronger. After that, they spent a long time enjoying each other's closeness and warmth. Bob touched her hand with care, and Arlene smiled gratefully, feeling completely safe. Later, nestled in his arms, she reflected on how close she had come to making a mistake. Now she knew that this moment would forever remain in her memory as a symbol of the importance of sincerity and trust. Arlene stood up first. She quietly left the bed without waking her man. After the night they spent together, she was sure he needed rest. This thought made her smile. She glanced at the clock on her way to the kitchen. It was 7 o'clock in the morning on a glorious Saturday. The bright sun filled her apartment with a joyful, carefree atmosphere. While she measured out the coffee grounds, Arlene hummed tunes provided by her graceful feathered friends outside the window. Before they left Zale last night, they agreed that Charlie would meet his father. Weaver and Chris will be at Arlene's apartment around 8 in the morning. Jeannie will have the boy dressed by 8:30, after which his mother will come and pick him up. Soon after the coffee began to brew, it called Bob. His nose twitched and inhaled the scent. What a great way to wake up, he thought. He looked around the bedroom. It had been a long time since he woke up in this room. Too long. It's good to be back. Well, good morning, sleepyhead. Bob's attention was diverted by a loving woman standing in the doorway with 2 cups of morning coffee. "Good morning, beautiful," he replied with a wide smile. He wasn't sure if she would notice the pulled sheet or not, so he consciously moved to make sure. The bouncing sheet definitely caught her attention. "Was it for my sake?" she asked with a laugh. "Oh, yes," he replied. "Why don't you put these cups down and jump? I'll take you for a walk." Arlene placed 2 cups of coffee on the dresser and looked at Bob with a smile. "Wasaha!" she exclaimed, throwing herself onto the bed with childish exuberance. She tore off the sheet and settled down next to him, resting her head on his shoulder. "You still surprise me," he said, smiling and hugging her. Arlene responded with a quiet laugh, looking into his eyes. They enjoyed each other's warmth and closeness, talking about small things and sharing moments of happiness. Time seemed to stand still while they were together. Their laughter and jokes filled the room. These simple moments, filled with warmth and comfort, reminded them why they value each other so much. Soon Arlene noticed the watch. "Oh, damn, Weaver and Chris will be here in 45 minutes, she exclaimed. "We still have time," Bob answered, stretching lazily. "But maybe we should have time to take a shower," he winked, making her laugh. They rose from the bed, preparing for the arrival of their friends, with a feeling of joy and calm that remained after their quiet but meaningful morning. Arlene fell onto Bob's chest, out of breath. Embracing each other and immersed in passion, they simply began to cling to each other. "Oh, damn," Arlene cursed, standing up. What happened?" "They'll be here in 20 minutes, she replied. "Hurry up, we still need to take a shower." She saw a smile on his face. "No, I don't mean those souls. Come on, Bob. Weaver is supposed to meet his son for the first time this morning. I want to get everything ready for them." Bob felt a flash of guilt. He was so absorbed in his own reconciliation that he forgot about his friend. He quickly jumped out of bed. 20 minutes later, Arlene was still drying her hair when the doorbell rang. "Right on time," Bob commented. "Do you think they'll be late? I'm actually surprised they didn't come an hour ago. Can you let them in, honey? I'll be out in a few minutes. The coffee is ready." When Bob opened the door, he almost didn't recognize the cheerful man on the other side. Sure, Weaver had smiled and joked over the last few months, but there was always that constant sadness underneath the surface. It was visible in his eyes. The person who now stood in front of him was no longer the same person. His eyes sparkled brightly. The lady on his arm also looked like someone's soul had just been freed. "Hey, guys. Arlene is still drying her hair, but she'll be out in a minute or so. The coffee is fresh. Come into the kitchen," he said, turning and leading the way. When Arlene joined the group, the conversation reflected the nervousness in the room. 38 times during his professional career, Weaver stepped into the ring with someone who was determined to beat him to a pulp, but he never felt afraid. It was a feeling he was unfamiliar with. Until that morning when he was about to meet his son for the first time. Christina looked at him and reached out to take his hand. "Are you ready?" "What? What did you tell him? About me, that is?" With everything going on, he never thought to ask her before. "I didn't lie to him, Chuck. I told him pretty much what I told you, without all the details, of course. I told him that you disappeared a few days before the fight, and I haven't seen or heard from you since. He hates me." He never spoke directly. He asked questions about how you looked, things like that, but he never expressed any feelings for you. How could he? He only knows about what I told him. "Well," Weaver said, his voice shaking, "looks like we'll find out soon enough, don't we?" Everything will be fine, Arlene told him. Of course it is, Weaver, Bob said. Christina rose from her chair and leaned over to kiss her husband. Don't worry, honey. We're family now. She turned to the door. I'll be back soon, she said. Weaver looked at his friend. Bob, I've never been so afraid in my life, he admitted. Weaver, I met him. He's a good guy. Christina did a great job raising him. You'll be very proud of him, and I'm sure the feeling is mutual. Before anyone could say another word, everyone looked up when they heard the door entering. They watched carefully as Chris walked in with Charlie, and he began to greet two people he knew. Good morning, Mrs. Ranger. Good morning, Mr. Roll. He stopped mid-sentence when the man sitting at the far end of the table met his gaze. Charlie studied him for a moment. Mom, who is this person? Charlie, when you have questions about. No, no, he interrupted his mother. His voice became agitated. Who is he? I think I know. He looks like the photo on your dresser. Silence filled the room as the young man cautiously approached the mysterious figure. Are you my father? He asked. Yes, Weaver responded with tears in his eyes. Where were you? Charlie shouted, waving his fists in rage. For the first time in his life, Weaver didn't try to defend himself. Furious, small fists struck his arms and chest again and again. With each blow, Weaver felt his son's agony and accepted each wound with a sense of atonement for his guilt. Charlie, his mother screamed, but before she could grab him, the fire that erupted inside her son died out as quickly as it started. The initial shock of meeting his father for the first time and the ensuing anger faded after the attack. In their place arose the boy's looming love for his father. Now, out of breath, he stood and looked at the object of so many dreams and nightmares. Dad, Dad, where have you been? He shouted. I knew it. I knew you would come back to us someday. I knew it. Tears flowed from the boy's eyes as the ecstatic young man ran into his father's open arms. I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry, but I'll never leave you again, I promise. Never again. There wasn't a single dry tear in the room as everyone watched the two hold each other. Nobody spoke. Everyone was too tight to say two syllables. They simply watched the remarkable bond between father and son. This was too much for Christina. This actually happened. Her family was together for the first time. Her legs turned to rubber, and she fell onto the chair. She hid her face in her hands and sobbed. Arlene looked at her man. She raised her hand and wiped the moisture from his eyes with a gentle smile, then wiped her own with a small giggle. Okay, Arlene spoke first. Who's at breakfast? Charlie, how do you like your eggs? Here, Christina said, wiping her eyes. Let me help. That morning turned out to be not only memorable for Weaver and Charlie, but also for everyone else. Lifelong friendships were forged that day, friendships that will never be broken. Weaver, Christina, and Charlie spent the next day Saturday and all day Sunday together as a family. Later on Sunday evening, everyone started to get nervous. Although it was temporary, they had to separate again. They both had jobs to get up to in the morning. Tears flowed freely as Chris and Charlie headed back to Peoria. This was an event that was repeated several times over the next few months. Bob, it's getting harder and harder to say goodbye, but we have a lot of things to get done before she can move here permanently, Weaver explained to a friend one evening at Zales after the place closed. Chris has 6 months left to rent an apartment. I have 4 months left to graduate. The school year starts in a week, and Chris doesn't like that Charlie will have to change schools in the middle of the year, but we both don't have the money to pay both contracts. Weaver, what happened to all the money you made in the ring? Hell, with your wins you should have made at least $1 million, Bob said. This is the first thing I checked when I found out I had a family again. I hired a lawyer, hoping that I still had some money left. In fact, I won almost $4 million in prize money, but it wasn't all mine. When I fought, I was registered as a corporation. I had investors who owned shares. Damn, they probably freaked out when you left, Bob remarked. Yeah, Weaver chuckled. And they weren't the only ones. The World Boxing Association canceled my $1 million fight fee and fined me another million for failure to fulfill my contract. The corporation was also sued by almost everyone associated with the fight, including the champion himself. There was nothing left, not a penny. Of course, I didn't know anything about all these lawsuits until last month. He took a sip of beer and continued. The lawyer said it was good that I had been invisible all this time. There is a statute of limitations within which they could sue me, but 3 years ago they could have done it in person. They wouldn't get much, but they could seize my modest earnings, and I think some of these people would do it just out of revenge. Damn, Bob shook his head. Weaver, if you need a loan, I can help. I'm not rich, but I can spare a little. Thanks, Bob, Weaver interrupted, but I can handle it myself. I won't say that I lived large all these years. I have some money for a rainy day. It's just, there's so much to do that sometimes it feels overwhelming. Both men took a sip of their beer before Weaver continued. You know what still bothers me about this whole story? Why did Eric lie to me? We were close, Bob. We were more than just a boxer and a manager. He was almost like a father to me. Why the hell would he say that to me when he knew it would ruin my life? I just don't understand. With all these events, Bob completely forgot about Eric. I know where he is if you want to ask him, he told his stunned friend. Do you know where he is? Weaver frowned. All this time you knew where to find Eric and didn't tell me. Sorry. Like you, I was so overwhelmed with everything that I just didn't think about it until you mentioned it. Well, where? Where the hell is he? Is he in Chicago? No, Bob replied. He lives in a cheap hotel in Grand Rapids. This is one of those places where there is a telephone switchboard. You call the number and they connect you to a room. Arlene probably still has that number. If not, then Derek definitely has. This is the guy who found your wife. Weaver's chest tightened with anger at his former manager, which flared at the thought of meeting him. I want this number, he barked. I want to know why. He might not want to talk to you on the phone, Bob noted. Then I'll go there and beat the answer out of him if I have to, Weaver growled. Bob regretted saying this. For the first time in months, he saw the pain and anger return to his friend's face. My tongue is my enemy. I should have left everything as it was, he thought. Come on, Weaver, you can't be serious. The way he lives, I think he's already punishing himself all the time, Bob said. He remembered how he and Arlene went to visit Eric. Before leaving, the old man asked to tell Weaver that he was sorry. Arlene wanted to ask what he meant, but Bob pulled her out of there, thinking she was delving into someone else's bad memories. Now he regretted that he had not let her question him. Listen, Bob continued, I really feel like someone should be with you when you call. Why don't you come see me on Saturday morning? By then I'll have the number and you can prepare a little bit for what you're going to say. Weaver agreed it was a good idea. He needed time to calm down. He understood that if he started screaming and swearing at Eric, he most likely would not get answers to his questions. By the time Weaver arrived on Saturday, Bob had already made coffee. Sit down, relax a little, and have a cup of coffee, he told the nervous former fighter. Grand Rapids is an hour ahead of us, but I'm not even sure Eric is up yet. Bob started talking about the gym to distract Weaver from thinking about Eric. When he calmed down a little, Bob asked a question. Well, are you ready? Do you want to do this? Yeah, let's get this over with, he replied with a slight nod. Bob dialed a number on his phone. When the switch connected him to Eric's room, he handed the phone to Weaver. Hello? Weaver was startled to hear a woman's voice on the other end of the line. Oh, hello. Hello. Is Eric home? May I know who is calling? My name is Chuck Adams. I used to be a fighter. Eric was my manager. Sorry, Mr. Adams. I'm Tara, his daughter. Daughter? He asked in surprise. I didn't even know he had a daughter. I don't think anyone knew, she remarked. My mother left him when they were both very young and took me with her. I've been looking for it for years and only recently found it, a couple of weeks ago. She sighed loudly before continuing. Sorry, but you won't be able to talk to him. He's in the hospital. I'm afraid he only has a few days left. He died of cirrhosis of the liver. Dying, he repeated in shock. I'm sorry, he replied. Thank you. Listen, maybe you can help me. You said that you are a fighter. Do you know how I can find a fighter named Weaver? It's me, he answered. That's the nickname the sports writers gave me. Oh my God, Tara exclaimed. He asked about you. I can't believe I found you. Please, could you come to Grand Rapids? He says that he must talk to you before he dies. Her voice died down with sadness. He decided instantly. Yes, I will come today. What hospital is he in? When he told Bob about the situation, he insisted on going with him. The problem was Christina. She and Charlie were planning to come over for the weekend. She didn't have a cell phone, and he was sure she was on her way. Bob called Arlene, explained the situation, and asked her to wait for Christina at Weaver's apartment. Once that was settled, Weaver jumped into Bob's car, and they hit the road. 3.5 hours later, they met Tara outside Eric's hospital room. She was very grateful to Weaver for coming. This is his dying wish, she told them both. Just last night, before I left, he asked if I had found you. As much as Bob wanted to hear the conversation between Eric and Weaver, he knew they needed some time alone. He invited Tara to the dining room for lunch. When Weaver entered the room, Eric was lying with his eyes closed. Eric, this is Weaver. Are you awake? Eric opened his eyes and stared at him. Weaver, he said, not believing his eyes. She did it. She really found you. Weaver was in no mood for pleasantries. Why, Eric, why did you lie to me that Chris left with another man? Why did you do this to me? He was so weak that he could barely speak. I'm sorry. I didn't want to ruin your marriage. I just wanted you to be in the best shape for the fight. I thought she was distracting you, and I wanted her to leave the camp. Eric coughed and was forced to remain silent for a minute. His emaciated body shook from violent bouts of coughing. He reached for a glass of water on the table by the bed and took a couple of sips through a straw. Why did you say that she left with another man? Weaver asked sternly. Because you were going to go after her. I finally got her out of the camp, and you were going to bring her back. I had to come up with something. I wanted you to focus on the fight and not on your wife. This is the first thing that came to my mind. I knew you. You would never want her back if you thought she cheated on you. He started coughing again and took a few more sips of water before continuing. I knew you would be angry, but I thought I could use that anger in the ring. I figured you'd take it out on the champion and win the fight. After that, I was going to tell you that I lied about her leaving. I was going to tell you that she's waiting for you at home, but you didn't give me the chance. I didn't expect you to just leave. At first, I wasn't worried. I thought you were licking your wounds somewhere and would come back. But when you weren't in bed the next morning, I sent the guys out to look for you. When you were gone by lunchtime, I tried calling your apartment in Chicago, but no one answered. Eric began to breathe heavily and was forced to pause. Do you want some water? Weaver asked. The weakened man shook his head. I just get tired sometimes, he replied. Give me a minute. It took him a while, but he finally took a deep breath to regain his strength and continued. I didn't understand what really happened until the fight was canceled. I thought you went back to Chris's house, and when you found out I lied, you got so angry that you decided not to fight to teach me a lesson. Weaver saw a tear roll out of the corner of Eric's eye and slowly run down his cheek. The day the news about the fight being canceled came out in the papers, Chris started calling everywhere to find out what happened. That's when I realized what I had done. I knew that you not only left me, but also abandoned her. I realized that you believed my words. I knew I ruined your marriage. I was going to find you, but after that everything went wrong. The WBA took us seriously. It wasn't enough for them to just break the guarantee. They also fined us an extra $1 million. And then, I know, Weaver interrupted. I've heard all about it. He knew he should feel sympathy for his former manager, but he couldn't. On the contrary, The anger he felt did not subside. How could you do this? You were my manager. Hell, you were almost like a father to me. You should have protected me, not lied to me. Do you even realize that Christina almost lost her baby? Twice. All because she suffered in the unknown, not knowing what happened to me. For 10 years, she raised our son alone. Can you hear me, Eric? Our son, my son, a boy who until recently didn't even know if he had a father. And I. He was forced to take a deep breath as he felt himself begin to lose control. All this time, Eric, I had a son, and I didn't even know he existed. Another deep breath. Chris didn't know if I was alive or dead. For 10 years, Eric, that's what your lie cost me and my family 10 fucking years. I'm sorry, Eric answered, his voice weak from the conversation. He reached out to touch Weaver, but dropped his hand when he realized that he would not return his gesture. I I should have started looking for you. I should have found Chris and told her everything, but I couldn't face it. I was just drinking myself to death. So you knew what you had done and didn't even try to fix it. Hell, if it weren't for a woman named Arlene, Chris and I would still be on opposite sides. Yes, Eric whispered almost inaudibly. Arlene. She came to me. Yeah, I know. She barely knew me then either. In fact, the first time we met, I was rude to her, and she still showed more concern for me than you, Weaver muttered through clenched teeth. She was the one who found Christina and Charlie. She was the one who reunited us. This should have been your job, Eric. At least you tried to make amends for ruining our lives. Eric nodded slightly. Sorry, Chuck, he muttered. He looked again at Weaver's angry face, closed his eyes, and took his last breath. The signal next to his bed turned into a long, continuous hum. It's good that you didn't ask me to forgive you, Eric, Weaver said quietly, because I don't think I could. You've taken too much from me. With these words, he turned and left the room. At this time, 2 nurses were already running into the room. Weaver went down to the dining room and walked up to the table where his best friend and daughter Erica were sitting. He felt he had to tell her. Tara, I'm sorry, but your father died a couple of minutes ago. Tara sighed, stunned for a second, but soon reconciled. I knew he wouldn't last long. Did he manage to tell you everything he wanted? Yes, he nodded, without going into details. You said on the phone that you found him just a couple of weeks ago. God, how hard it is for you now. I'm sorry that you didn't have time to spend more time together. Yes, me too, Tara replied. I don't know what happened between him and my mother. I was only 2 when they broke up. Mom didn't want to talk about it, but I think she cheated on him. She wiped away the tears that appeared in her eyes. For a long time I wondered who my father was, but my mother didn't say a word about him. It wasn't until she died last year that I met someone at the funeral who knew them both when they were married. He told me about his father, said that he was once one of the best managers in boxing. He gave me enough information, and I was able to contact my dad. It took some time, but I found him, she added proudly. They talked a little more, after which Bob and Weaver expressed their condolences to her and went home. Bob really wanted to know what exactly Eric said, but since Weaver was in no hurry to share, he decided not to pry into his personal conversation. On the way, Weaver thought about what Tara had said. He wondered if she was right to suspect that her mother had cheated on her and then ran away with the child. Maybe Tara isn't Eric's daughter after all, and she doesn't know it. Maybe it was this story with Chris that explained Eric's envy of Weaver and his marriage. He would never know and didn't want to think about it. His ordeal is over. Now he looked only forward. Within a few months, Weaver found a better job that paid almost twice as much as before. After learning that his apartment complex's management company also owned several others, he arranged to move and signed a new lease at one of the complexes in the northwest suburbs. The area there was much nicer and the schools were excellent. 4 months after returning from Grand Rapids, Charlie and Christina finally moved in with Weaver and they became a family. Bob and Arlene insisted on taking them out to dinner to celebrate the occasion. After a wonderful dinner, Weaver stood up and raised his glass. I would like to make a toast, he announced. to the two best friends a person can have, and especially to one inquisitive person who looked into a glass of whiskey and saw my future there. Arlene, I am forever in your debt. We are all in eternal debt. Thank you for bringing my family back into my life. Arlene gratefully accepted his words, and everyone drank. When the glasses went down, Bob stood up. Weaver, Christina, Charlie, I want to make a confession. The purpose of this dinner was twofold. First, Arlene and I wanted to congratulate you. For 10 years you were separated and did not know about each other's fate, but your love did not fade away. Such strong love is rare, and we express our admiration for you. Everyone took a sip, and he continued. And secondly, I want to announce something, but let Arlene say it herself. From the very beginning of the evening, she was eager to share the news. Dear. Arlene could barely contain her excitement as she rummaged through her purse. Finally, she pulled out her left hand and extended it to the middle of the table for everyone to see. Christina gasped when she noticed the large diamond on her ring finger. Oh, Arlene, he's amazing. Congratulations, she exclaimed. Thank you, Arlene beamed. Weaver smiled at his friend. Well, finally, buddy. Bob shrugged with a wide grin. Will you be my best man? It's an honor, Weaver replied. And I want you to be my bridesmaid, Arlene said, turning to Christina. And you, young man, we will need you as a manager to escort the guests to their places. Agree? Both mother and son happily agreed to the roles offered to them. For the rest of their lives, the Adams and Rawlings families were very close to each other. Bob and Arlene had 2 children, a boy and a girl, whom Charlie considered his brother and sister, and they looked at him as an older brother. Over time, Bob and Weaver helped many boys grow into real men through their work with the Chicago Youth Organization. Exactly 20 years after Weaver left Eric's hospital room, he stood alone at the grave of his former manager. A lot of time has passed. He looked at the simple tombstone and spoke. Eric, I still remember the day when you said that Christina was pregnant by someone else and ran away with him. What I remember most is the pain. Nothing like this had ever happened to me before, and no matter how angry I was, I couldn't get rid of this pain. For 10 years, she did not let me go for a minute. If it weren't for one special woman who brought me and Chris back to each other, I would continue to carry this pain with me today. He took a deep breath and continued. But Chris and I are back together for 20 years, and they were the best 20 years of my life. I came today because I've had a heavy feeling in my chest for several months now, and I know exactly where it comes from. Nobody knows I'm here. I told Chris I was away on business because this was just between you and me. When I first saw Christina after all those years, and she told me what happened between you and her, I hated you. You were supposed to be my friend, Eric. You should have protected me. Instead, you destroyed what was most dear to me. Since then, I have harbored a grudge against you, and this grudge has been eating away at me from the inside. So I came to say in person that I forgive you. I think this is exactly what you wanted to hear then, in the hospital. But when I found out the truth, when I realized how you betrayed me, well, then I just couldn't forgive you. I couldn't. Well, I said everything I wanted, and I'll go. My son and his lovely wife are coming over for dinner with their grandchildren tonight, and I don't want to be late. Sleep well, Eric, sleep well. End. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even click to the next one.